Welcome to tonight's episode of Science Happy Hour, the show where science is a discussion, often over drinks. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I am Kate. I'm your host for this evening, and I am joined by two people who are lovers of animals and various biological things.
They're okay, I guess. Yeah.
We have a few of them here at home. We love them. And we're going to be talking about biodiversity today. Super important topic, especially for we biologists. I'm a biologist of the human persuasion, and these two are, you know, biologists of other forms, and I'll let them tell you who they are and what they do. And yeah, welcome. Thank you for being here.
I'll go next, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I am a PhD student in environmental science, and I am actually both a natural and a social scientist, and so I study both human and non-human animals, and I talk with people and learn from local fishermen in Central America to help me better understand sea turtles and better conserve them.
Cool.
Right on.
Everybody loves sea turtles.
That sounds like an awesome job.
It's a really
It does
awesome
sound
job.
really awesome
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
It's
very
wonderful.
I'm Grady. I'm a hydrologist at the USGS. I have a bio undergrad degree, so I am like 1/10 qualified for this conversation. I'll say some stuff. I might understand the terms she uses. That's about it. But other than that, yeah, I like biodiversity in animals. Turtles are great.
They're turtly awesome.
And I'm turtly awesome.
Yeah.
That will not be the last pun that is made tonight.
Yeah.
I have a feeling.
But yeah, turtles are awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. All right. Well, welcome, guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. So what the heck is biodiversity? Just to start us off, what does that actually mean?
So it's like just the variation of what there is in nature, right? So like different species, different ecosystems, just kind of everything that there is,
Oh,
basically, to put.
Yeah. Variety is the spice
Yeah.
of life. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We already have a horrible pun in chat. Shall we begin?
Shall
Yes.
we begin?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yes, we shall.
Yeah.
A hydrologist is a water scientist,
Yes.
by the way.
Yes. Yep.
So, water.
Water.
Water is life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also
That's very
important.
true. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I've read a lot about, just in prepping for this episode, read a lot about biodiversity as a concept, and there are many different kinds of biodiversity. So can we talk a little bit about the different types of biodiversity and why we care about different ones?
Yeah, so there's like, genetic biodiversity is one type of biodiversity, and it's basically the amount of different genes that there are that we have to make up species, and that's important so that there's a variety of ways in which the species can survive ultimately.
Yeah.
That's comes within that genetic diversity, and so kind of what that means is the way to think about like genetic biodiversity is in dogs. There were 3 dogs running
Yeah.
around here earlier.
Yep.
Is that dogs are all one species,
Right.
but their genetic diversity allows for things like Chihuahuas and Great Danes
Right.
and Corgis and
Yeah.
all the wonderful varieties that
Totally.
there are.
Right. All that human interaction that
Yes.
we've had with them.
Aren't
Yeah.
cheetahs like super low genetic diversity? They're all
Uh,
basically like cousins or second cousins.
That's
I
true
believe
with a
I've
lot of
heard
dog
that.
species,
Yeah.
actually. So I've read a lot about some of the more popular breeds, like golden
Mhm.
retrievers and things that people
Yeah.
want a lot. All the breeding lines have been overbred so much that they have very low genetic diversity. So they're actually having problems with hereditary health issues because of that.
Right.
So
Okay.
like a lot of dogs are being bred and then they end up with crazy health issues
Mhm.
later in
Right.
life.
And so I don't know much about cheetahs. They live on the land. So
Yeah, they do actually.
Sure.
But like for turtles, which all 7 species of sea turtles are protected under like international endangered species protections of a variety of them. So there's 7 different species, and a big thing is we're trying to learn more about their genetic diversity. So within the species and then population, which are smaller segments of the species, smaller little kind of like groups of the species.
Sure.
And so what's really important in wild animals is we need genetic diversity so that they can survive, because the genes allow them to have different kinds of like characteristics. Like how fast they can swim or what they eat, like how their jaw is shaped. And so if you have more genetic diversity, then it's better for the animals because they have kind of more possibilities within their genes to find something that allows them to survive really well. And if they have fewer of that, then they have less options, and so it can be harder. And there's other complications that come with less diversity as well.
Another land animal example is the Tasmanian Devil. They're all dying due to that crazy face cancer.
Oh yeah.
Right, yeah.
But apparently there's a population that now can combat the cancer and survive.
Oh wow.
wow.
So
Cool.
their genetic diversity is going to be crushed to almost zero,
Yeah.
but they're going to survive as a
But then
species.
those genes, that gene or those genes,
Mhm.
depending on what's actually
Right.
driving it,
Mhm.
that's gonna go to
Like fixation.
fixation. That's
Yeah.
the word. Yeah, really, really quickly because
Mhm.
all the ones that survive are
Yeah.
gonna have
Right.
that. So then it'll theoretically never be a problem.
Yeah, we call that a genetic
So-
bottleneck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
Mhm.
There you
bottleneck.
go.
If
Yep.
only we had a
Yeah.
bottle.
I know. this little
Yeah,
box of
kinda-
Mistral kind of shows
Yeah.
the bottleneck,
a
yeah.
little bit of a bottleneck.
A liquor
yeah.
neck.
Yeah, look
So,
at yeah.
That sounds dirty though.
sounds
Yeah. So can I ask you real quick,
Anyway.
what are the 7 species, if you know?
Yeah,
off the top of your head?
so there's two different families of sea turtles. There's one that's called Dermacheles, which means like soft shell, and there's one called Chelonidae. And within those, so this is just kind of like, right, for those who don't know, there's ways that we classify animals, and we just kind of think of like a family tree, right? You've got like cousins and like second cousins and grandparents and things like that. So that's kind of how we go through. So there's these two parts of where the sea turtles are, and there's one sea turtle called the Leatherback Sea Turtle, which is the only soft-shelled sea turtle still in existence.
Oh, really?
Sea turtles in general have been around for like, I don't know, 150, 200 million years.
Dang.
So they were swimming in the waters when dinosaurs were around. So leatherbacks are the largest of the sea turtle species. They can be 8 feet in length from head to tail. They weigh half a ton.
That's crazy.
And they're the
they-
only soft shell?
They're the only soft-shelled sea
That's-
turtles.
Oh.
So there are some land turtles,
Oh,
or like
okay.
aquatic or
Oh,
freshwater
right.
turtles that are also soft shell.
Oh,
Nice.
cool.
But within sea turtles, leatherbacks are the only soft shelled.
Right.
And one of the reasons they have their soft shell, so what it is like most sea turtles, when you look at their shell, it kind of looks like a soccer ball
Yeah.
pattern.
Mhm.
And the little things that make up the soccer ball pattern are called scoots,
Scoots.
like scooting on your butt.
Yep. Yeah.
But leatherbacks actually have bony plates that kind of look like stripes on their back. And then they
Oh,
have their
interesting.
leathery back, and that's because they can dive really deep, and the pressure changes as you dive deep in the ocean.
Oh.
And
the
so they
soft
need to
shell.
be able to
Right.
Wow.
expand and
Yeah,
constrict.
yeah.
I learned a thing.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And so that's leatherbacks. They're the largest. They can weigh,
That's
like
awesome.
I said, half a ton. They're huge. And Google leatherback esophagus or leatherback mouth.
I've seen that.
So they
It's a
eat-
horror show.
Yeah, they eat pretty much exclusively jellies,
Yeah.
jellyfish, but jellies because
Gotcha.
they're not fish, so we call them jellies.
Sure.
But so leatherbacks eat pretty much exclusively jellies, which is kind of insane because they're giant animals and
Right.
they're sustained pretty much off
There's
of jellies.
some
Mhm.
in between us right now.
Yeah.
In the-
Oh yeah. Ooh, cool.
Yeah,
See,
You're
so
about to lose your ear.
jellies.
yeah.
Oh,
right.
thank you.
Uh-oh. Woo.
Thank
Can't
you.
lose
Is
that
that the world or
recycling.
the recycling?
That's the
Recycling.
recycling.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't wanna
So
lose that.
Yeah.
the picture of the leatherback esophagus is just like, it looks like, I don't even know, like almost
It's like little.
teeth or
It's
fingers
not.
or
So they're. I can't remember what they're called exactly, but they're not super like they look kind of like spines, but they're not
Yeah.
like they're kind of they're like they can move a little bit.
Sure.
And so what it is because jellies are mostly water. If you try to just take a big mouthful of jellies, a lot of them would just kind of like float back out, and so they have that in their
Oh.
in their mouth so that it can actually papillae, I think they're called. But I don't quote me on that.
We're totally quoting you on that right
But,
now. Papillae, that's what it's known for.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, think of it like little hooks. So they swallow the jellies, and then the jellies just get like stuck in their throat, and
Wow,
that's how they're
that's
able to
crazy.
eat them.
Are you gonna
Um,
show that on
I
the?
will add the
Awesome.
photo here in a second.
And so anyway, so those are leatherbacks. Getting
Okay.
back to the question, that's
Yeah.
one of the 7.
Good,
There we
good
go.
circling
Yeah,
back
back,
around.
yeah.
There
And
we
then
go.
there
Crazy
are
looking.
6 species of hard-shelled turtles, which have the soccer ball pattern called
Mhm.
scoots.
Scoot.
Like giant teeth.
Yeah,
Crazy.
you can see it
That's crazy.
there.
Yeah.
And so there are green sea turtles,
Okay.
which are the largest of the hard-shelled turtles. They can be like 400 to 500 pounds. They're very large. And green sea turtles are generally herbivores as adults. So they have all this. The cool thing is all the different sea turtle species have different shaped beaks. So they don't have teeth. We call it beaks, like a bird's beak.
Right, yeah.
And all the different species have beaks that are really well adapted for what they eat. And so green sea turtles eat a lot of seagrass. And so the way that their jaws come together are kind of like scissors.
All right.
So there's green sea turtles, and there are olive Ridley sea turtles and Kemp's Ridley sea turtles, which are pretty closely related. And they're the smaller two. And then loggerheads get their name because they have a giant head. We're not all that creative in sea turtle naming.
They're not called big head sea
Yeah,
turtles,
that's
right?
yeah.
That's all right.
And they have really powerful jaws. They can crush like conch shells, like big
Oh,
shells.
wow.
They can and like
That's
big
crazy.
crabs and stuff. And then there's the flatback sea turtle, which is only found in Australia.
Oh.
And then there is the Hawksbill sea turtle, which is the sea turtle species that I study,
Right.
and they get their name because their bill is shaped like that of a hawk.
Oh.
Hence hawksbill. And they
That's
use it
neat.
kind of like as tweezers, so they're known to eat sponges and small invertebrates off of hard substrate like
Really? They're
corals
just
and
like-
things. So
Just
they can
like
go in
little-
and pick it out.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Huh.
I think that was all
Very
7
cool.
of them. Yeah, I think that was all of them.
Someone was counting.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
sure that was
I
7.
believe you.
So leatherback, green, olive Ridley, Kemp's Ridley, flatback, loggerhead, and hawksbill.
There you go.
Dang.
Yeah. And
Check in, check.
yeah.
What's the smallest one?
The smallest one is the Kemp's Ridley, and they're only found in the Gulf of Mexico. So they're
Okay.
one of those species that needs the most help because they're only found in the Gulf of Mexico, which is an international gulf. It's a high fishing gulf.
Right.
There are oil spills in the Gulf. There's a lot of runoff from big rivers and things that go into the Gulf.
Eutrophication,
And
dead zone.
yeah, so there's a lot of my colleagues spend the focus just on working on the Kemp's Ridleys because their population is really only in the Gulf of Mexico, where all other sea turtle species, with the exception of flatbacks who are just around Australia, Kemp's Ridleys are the only ones that are like really in kind of a smaller area.
I see.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So kind of a
That's
random.
Sea turtle question.
Yeah, we have a
Okay.
random question.
Yeah. Why does a can of compressed air get cold as I spray it? I don't think I know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer.
I know
to
the
that.
answer to that.
Do you?
Yeah, because think of like an air molecule in this room right now. It's got a specific temperature, but it's bouncing against other air molecules, right? When you put it in the can, you heat it up because suddenly it's vibrating really fast and bouncing off
Sure.
everything else, right? And then when you expel it, what happens is suddenly all that molecule isn't slamming into anything, right? And it's got way more space, and it actually absorbs heat. That's what happens.
All
We've
right.
got a physicist in the room who's
Yeah.
probably like dying.
No, that's a.
Not that kind of physicist.
Yeah,
Not that kind of physicist. Here's a turtle
Oh,
question.
what species?
What species would a teenage
I
mutant
think-
ninja turtle be?
Gosh, which one would they be?
They were land turtles, right?
They are land
They were. I'm
turtles.
trying to think if they would be sea turtles.
Box turtles? I mean, that'd be the common.
Yeah, that would. But sea turtles are really fast, so I would say that.
Dude.
And like pretty
Could
like
be.
agile, like
Ninja
they.
turtles can flip.
Yeah,
and
like
it's-
sea
Yeah.
turtles can swim like almost 30 miles an hour. We think so.
Dang.
Like they're fast.
That's crazy.
Gosh, what species? If God, that's a really good question. I'm gonna have
It
to
is a
think
really
about
good
that.
question.
What species of sea turtle would Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles be?
Maybe just by size, the leatherback. But they
Yeah,
have hard
But they're not,
shells,
like,
so I would
Yeah.
maybe
8
say
feet
they have a
big.
hard
I,
shell.
they're very charismatic, so it'd have to be one of the species that has like the prettier face.
Ooh,
And so I
okay.
would probably say
I
like
like that.
maybe green turtles are pretty
Okay.
charismatic. I mean, hawksbills are, but I'm totally biased
Sure.
about that. But green turtles, I'm gonna say green turtles, and I'm just gonna. I'll pick
Let's go
that.
with
Green
that.
turtles.
Green turtles.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. All right, cool. You heard it here first, folks.
Secret of the ooze.
Yeah.
They don't like pizza though, so.
Oh
there's
yeah,
that.
That's some
a
bullshit.
toughie.
But they like, so in Spanish, seagrass is pasta marino, which is like, sounds kind of like Italian
Mm, it
food,
does.
so we'll go with
Yeah.
that.
Pasta
All right, cool.
marino.
I think it sounds legit.
That's a way cooler name than seagrass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pasta marino.
Totally. All right, let's move on to our first segment for this evening, which is Discovery.
Woo.
And we have a quick discussion here today about a new paper that just came out talking about how we can protect biodiversity. So this particular paper came from some researchers out of Yale and the University of Grenoble, I guess. And they basically found that if we were to increase our protected lands by only 5%, we would end up making huge gains in terms of protecting biodiversity, specifically for birds and mammals. So this is kind of a change in strategy compared to what we normally think about. What do you guys know about sort of conservation activities in general as a context for this, if anything?
Just like as far as like setting aside land for
Yeah,
conservation.
yeah,
Well,
sure.
there are marine protected areas, which are
Mhm.
areas
Right.
where there's like limited fishing, and sometimes it's like only small fishers can go in. Sometimes it's
Okay.
completely banned. Like it kind of depends on where you are.
Sure.
But like my thought on protected lands is not only, especially ones that are protected, but also have like some kind of human use is allowed, like
Mhm.
national parks, for instance,
Right.
or like
Which
wildlife
we're gonna
refuges.
go to right now.
Ooh, Yosemite.
Now we're in Yosemite.
Like wildlife refuges where you can sometimes like go on walking trails or
Yeah,
go
yeah.
hiking through national forests, and
Mhm.
so things like that I think are really important, because not only does it provide resources with kind of a minimal human impact for
Right.
the non-human animals that are there, but it also provides an opportunity for humans to connect with nature and
Sure.
the animals that are there, and to learn more, especially about like native animals to their area. And so that's just, it's really important to have all the regulations and also space set aside so that wild animals have the resources that they need to
For
be
sure.
successful.
Sure.
But there's also value to like respectful and limited human use of areas, so that people can get out and connect with their animals, so
absolutely.
that they develop, a connection with it, and
Yeah.
then learn to care about it and want to learn like
Right.
what is that species, what does it do here, like
Mhm.
how does it live here, because I live here, so like
Sure.
what do we have in common, and
Mm.
how can I help it, and
Right.
so I think that kind of on both sides.
Yeah, that does a
Land's
lot to
important.
just kind of show people the impact they may have
Mhm.
on their surroundings, and being able to see what is actually there that's being affected by it is super important.
I agree with everything you guys said, but we're right now sitting in front of Yosemite,
Right.
Mhm.
and the one time I've been to Yosemite Valley, I found like dirty diapers behind boulders. Like it's
Sure.
crazy.
Yeah.
And here in New
Bringing
Mexico,
people in is essentially bringing
Yeah.
in trash.
totally.
Yeah,
And
that's-
some people
that's
just
fair.
suck, dude. Some
Yeah.
people should just be thrown off the top of Half Dome, right? Like
Yeah.
they're gonna just do horrible things.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
I rock climb, and that takes you to some like pretty remote places,
Yeah.
especially in New Mexico, because there's nobody here, anyways. And every place I've ever been, you find Bud Light cans,
Yep.
old tires, abandoned, rusty, shitty things.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy where people have gone and just dropped
Just
things.
left
And that
shit,
it's
yeah.
and stuff will get to even where there aren't people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been
Right.
I've been on a remote beach in Costa Rica where I literally had to hike over a mountain and down to this beach, and you can't even see where people are living, and it's just covered in trash because of how
Just
the currents
on
have
the-
come in
right.
and the tides.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
That's pretty awful.
But
yeah, we should-
That's fair.
We should protect more lands, right?
Well,
Right.
so just to kind of have a little soapbox moment, I guess, like
Ooh.
go out into the wilderness, and there's this saying, leave no trace.
Yep.
You're supposed to go somewhere and
Yeah.
make it seem like you were never there. Don't leave any trash. Don't
Yeah.
fuck anything up.
Take out what you
But-
brought in.
Take
with
out
you.
That's
what
what
you
we're
bring
good
in.
at. That's what humans are good
It's
at.
true. We are really good at fucking shit up.
Yeah.
it's
It's like a specialty at this point.
yeah, which
So-
we're gonna talk more about later.
Yeah.
So
I'm not a pessimist or
Really
anything.
exciting,
Yeah.
guys.
We might get a little depressing at some point, but
Oh,
then
yeah.
we'll bring it back up.
Yeah.
I promise.
But anyway, like no. So having places that are set aside where humans can't go is really is important, especially in where there are lots of endangered species or endangered
Mhm.
ecosystems and habitats that are critical to conservation and to just kind of the general well-being and healthiness of the planet.
Sure.
So there is value in setting some places aside that just need to be set aside.
Right.
But it goes back to like, okay, are we conserving things just to be them like pristine, or are we conserving them so that we can use them?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and there's a different, I can't remember it right now, I should, but there's a difference between like conservation and preservation.
Sure.
And I'm mixing them up in my head right now, but one of them is where like you're conserving things just so that they're pristine, and one of them is you're conserving them or preserving them for like humans to use them.
Gotcha.
So I should remember, but I can't right now.
Google machine.
Yeah, Google machine
Yeah.
it. But it's an interesting kind of like subtle difference of one
Sure.
is
Yeah.
for itself and one is to be used for like
Right.
for human to be
Mhm.
preserved for human purposes.
Sure.
So.
Would a national park be the sort of used
Preservation.
for human purposes kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it serves both purposes.
Sure.
Because there are places in national parks where you can't go.
Right.
Yeah.
I went to Zion last summer, which was incredible.
Oh yeah, I've
And
never
no one
been.
can
That's
go.
one
You
I
should
It's
should
amazing.
go.
Yeah.
But there were places where you couldn't go. There were places where you weren't supposed to go, but there were clearly people there.
Sure.
So it's a thing where we really need to just a big part of it, right? Yes, you need to set aside these lands, but are people going to follow the rules?
Right,
And so
yeah,
the
yeah.
human component is such an important part
Mhm.
of it.
Yeah.
So setting aside lands and making it
Mhm.
like restricted is a good step and something that could be really beneficial, especially if it's like a remote area. But you can't ignore the.
For sure.
We need a plague, right? I think that's what it comes down to. Yeah. So, random aside, we're in front of Yosemite. There's a valley, I believe it's to the north, called Hetch Hetchy.
Mhm.
That is the other Yosemite that got dammed up
Oh.
back in the early part of the 1900s. And now there's a huge reservoir, and it's essentially one of the main sources of San Francisco's drinking water.
Oh wow.
And Yosemite has been shit in and shat on and trashed
Yeah.
pretty hard. And
Right. For years.
but Hetch Hetchy, despite the whole valley floor being flooded, is still pretty pristine,
Wow.
right? So like a huge human impact of putting a dam there and flooding
Right.
this massive glacial valley. But that's kind of what saved it in the same way. So like
Sure.
humans are weird. I
interesting.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a point to that, but
It's interesting.
yeah.
I learned
Yeah,
something new.
they're right next to each other. So
Right
it's
next
to
a
each other.
weird dichotomy,
Mhm.
I guess. But yeah, I mean, going back to what you were saying about how protected lands can allow people to get in touch with nature and see it and be in it. I think that like it starts there, and then teaching people things like leave no trace and
Right.
like just sort of like drilling it into you as a kid even.
Yeah.
It's just like it's like respecting the land that you're on and understanding why it's there, and
Right.
which is a hard thing to do.
Totally.
But it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
But
you
I
just
always-
have to drill it in
I
as
think
much as
like right, like
possible.
so when you go out into nature, you're basically going into like the homes of whatever animals
Right,
are
yeah,
living
yeah,
there.
for
Like
sure.
you know, like I'm not coming into your house and I'm not going to drink this beer and just like throw it in the corner and leave. You know.
I mean, you might if
You
you
could,
enough. You
yeah.
never know.
But like
Shots.
generally, right? Like remember what your mom says. Like you
Yeah.
don't throw trash on the floor in your own
Right.
house, kind of a thing.
Sure.
Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
where you know
Definitely.
wherever you are, something lives there, and it's
Right.
even like it goes down to like rock stacking, which
Ah.
can be pretty and come up with pretty pictures.
Sure.
But like something might live under that rock, and
Right.
you're now taking it and moving it all the way over there, and then stacking it under three other
Yeah,
rocks.
yeah.
And so we don't really think of it like that, but there's all kinds of little like micro habitats
Sure.
and
Yeah.
things that depend on stuff like that. And so even
Yeah,
things
that's
like
true.
if you move, you know, they like
Make a
when you
cairn
go.
or whatever.
You know, like when you go like tide pooling or something, if you like turn something over, that's cool if you want to look, but then like you put it back where you
Sure.
found it because, you know, it's like, have you ever had to search for the remote control or like your phone
Yeah. Right.
and you're like,
That's a good
oh
point. Yeah.
crap, where did
It's
I
like
put
you're
the
pulling
phone in?
the
Or like,
roof off of someone's house and looking in,
like putting it over.
and then like putting it over there, like what? I'm
Yeah.
getting rained on now.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like it, you know, just it's really cool to explore, and there's huge
Sure.
benefits to exploring. I'm a
Yeah.
big advocate for like informal education
Totally.
and getting out and exploring and learning what's around you and like what lives where you live.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, we're all cohabitating.
yeah, like I remember when I was
Awesome.
living in San Diego, I was working at a small zoo and aquarium, and we had this big shark tank with like all these native shark species in it, like leopard sharks and gray smoothhound sharks and just like small sharks. And people would be like, "We have these sharks in our ocean?" I was like, "Yes, we got them from the bay. We have the proper permits and things to bring them in, so we can show you what they're there." And they're like, "So when I'm in the ocean, there are sharks in the ocean?" Like, it seems really simple, but sometimes people just don't think about it.
Yeah,
because
Dude.
you just,
Yeah.
but like that's where they live.
Right. Yep. That is where they live. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. If you're like me and I'm terrified of sharks, totally irrationally, I like when I first went into open water, it was in Hawaii, and I like had a huge. I was like, oh, I can't do it because I know there are sharks there. And now I'm fine. But like the first time, I was just like, oh my god. So, but yeah. Anyway.
And sharks are really not
They're
aggressive,
really not,
and they're not.
That's why I say irrationally, because
Yeah.
I know all of these things.
But they're like bullets with the sharpest teeth.
Yeah,
in the
it's
world, right?
so unlikely that they're gonna bite you.
So
Yeah, no, totally. But if they do.
Yeah, I mean, if they do, it's not great. But even a rattlesnake bites you if it's not great.
Dude, I saw a
like-
rattlesnake last week.
Yeah.
I
I think you talked about that last week.
Did I?
Actually.
I screamed and ran away.
That's pretty much
Yeah.
my reaction.
I was
to
so scared.
rattlesnakes. Or like black widow. I learned recently that black widows really aren't gonna like come out and try to bite you. Like
No.
there was one in my room, and I mean, I grew up. We had them where I grew up, but like I didn't see them that often. They were just like
Yeah.
outside somewhere. But there was like a huge one in my room here, and I was like, huh. So I like went on to Twitter and asked. There's a really awesome science Twitter presence,
There is.
and
I
it's
didn't know this.
fabulous. And I was like, what do I do? There's a black widow in my room, and I read this really awesome article that said that like really they're not, unless you like squeeze them between your fingers and put their
Right.
fangs right in front of you.
Yeah.
They're not gonna bite you, and if they do, they probably aren't gonna put venom in you because they're not gonna eat you. So like,
Interesting.
Right, irrational fears.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
still see one, and I'm like, oh, even though I know
Totally.
it's
I am a straight
They're
murderer.
weirdly beautiful.
Are they?
I think they're beautiful. Like this, like jet black with the red. If
yeah.
they're females,
Yeah,
only.
yeah.
And I find them to be beautiful yet terrifying.
Yeah.
I mostly just worry about the dogs. Like, I don't
Right.
want them to get bit.
Around here,
Yeah.
I think this neighborhood has more black widows than anywhere I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and I am a murderer of black widows, like on a genocidal scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're destroying the local biodiversity.
Oh yeah, totally.
I have a deal with spiders. If they're in my house and they're like
Right.
in a corner, then that's totally
Yeah.
fine. If they're like walking on my bed or like on my
Yeah,
clothes,
get the fuck out.
or there was one on one of my birthday presents earlier this year,
Oh.
and I was like,
Yeah.
I want to open my birthday.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Can't do
I'm okay
I
with
do
all
my best,
spiders,
but-
but like black widows, you
widows
gotta
are
go.
Yeah.
but they're not gonna really bite you.
They
They're not
are,
gonna
yeah.
like come at you while you're sleeping. They're not
No,
interested.
right.
So
They don't
like
care. They want to be as far away from
they're
us as
another one of
possible,
those
for
not
sure.
super charismatic animals that gets a bad rap.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there are lots of those
Yeah.
apparently. Yeah.
Anyway,
So-
that's a topic for another show.
Yeah,
We're-
totally.
So protected lands, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lands are
So
good.
actually, I did have a question. There was, in the last presidential administration, there was a huge marine sanctuary established, right? Or in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Is that a sea turtle hotspot?
There's a lot of sea turtles in Hawaii. Hawaii has a
I have swam with them
has
there.
booming,
Really?
pretty good, awesome sea turtle. But they have mostly green turtles. They also have hawksbills are the primary ones. I'm sure they're in that protected area
Yeah.
because it's a really large area. I don't know specifically. That's a little bit outside the range of what I've been like super hyper focused on
yeah.
during my PhD.
Yeah. And this is the problem, right? I expect you to know everything
Right,
about
of
the
course.
ocean, turtles,
Yep. Yeah,
biology.
Yeah.
It's one of those where I'm a year away from graduating with my PhD, so
Yes,
I'm
you're
very
right.
like tunneled vision
Totally.
onto my one
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But there are sea turtles in Hawaii. There are green turtles a lot, and hawksbills, like I said. And it's actually, so sometimes if you're in Hawaii, you'll see that there are turtles like actually like basking in the sun. So as
Ah.
reptiles, they are ectotherms,
Yeah.
and so they need to thermoregulate. That's
I
like
do too, most of the time.
yeah.
I usually say that my inner lizard is needing
Oh
some
yeah,
sun.
I say I'm solar powered.
There you go.
But so the green turtle population in Hawaii is I think the only one that we know of in the world where the turtles actually come on land to bask in the sun. And
Oh.
I always say that like, well, if I lived in Hawaii, I would want to lay on the beach
Totally.
too.
Totally,
So
yeah.
like, I can't blame
They're
them.
like, they see all the people doing it and they're like, that's a good
yeah.
idea.
But
Yeah.
just FYI, like touching, approaching, riding, interacting in any way with a sea turtle is actually illegal and can be a really expensive fine. And they often seem really friendly because they're pretty docile and they know that you're not a predator most of the time.
Right.
And so it's really tempting. I always get people like, you said sea turtles? I once grabbed a shell and wrote it, or I like carved my initials in the algae that was growing on its shell, or I like laid down and hugged it. And I'm like, well, first of all, they're wild animals. They can bite. Like their beaks can break open shells. So they're not aggressive, but they're a wild animal. And in general, you don't want to touch any wild animals because, I mean, if a giant came and put its finger in my face, I'd probably bite it too.
Totally, right. Yeah, perfectly reasonable. When I was snorkeling in Hawaii, there was one that was like a few feet away, and I made sure to like not go near it. Because,
Dude, I don't
want
know.
to scare it.
And they'll come near you, but you're actually supposed to keep like 10 feet between you and a turtle. If they come to you, that's one thing, but you're not supposed to reach out and touch them. And like if a lifeguard or somebody sees you, it can be a really expensive fine.
Okay,
so
that's
it's
good
really
to know.
tempting, but don't do it. Like best practices is just for any wild animal. I mean, you don't know. You don't know if they're safe or not, and even like really charismatic looking animals that seem really nice can be predators or can be feisty or be territorial or so.
Right. So we have a question. It goes back to this article about the protected lands and all of that. Steve Squad is asking about the key species. So in this particular article, they were talking about strategically expanding those protected lands to allow key species to have greater biodiversity within that area, specifically within birds and mammals, which is what they were talking about. And they're asking, how are key species identified?
So key species are generally ones that have a big impact of like beyond just themselves. So sea otters in California are really, just hit the microphone, sorry. Sea otters in California eat sea urchins. And the sea urchins prey on the kelp and help keep the kelp forest in check. If you lose the sea otters, then you get a lot of urchins, and that decreases the kelp forest, which decreases the fish that can live in the kelp forest, which is not great for the entire ecosystem for the non-human animals, and then for the fishers, that's an issue too, because then there's a decrease. Right. So
huge impact.
So it's like it's like a point on the food web almost. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not maybe not all the time, but in the case of sea otters.
It's basically something that has kind of like that has a critical impact. Like think of like, it's a good analogy. Like if you play Jenga, right? Like there's certain pieces that you can pull, and it doesn't really matter. But if you pull, like if it's you can pull certain pieces, and it'll totally knock the whole thing over or make it really unsteady so that if you pull out one other piece, the whole thing's going to fall. So it's basically a species that is critical to the overall health or to kind of like how the interactions work.
Yeah. Oh, Kings or a Heart 1. Thanks so much for the follow. Cool.
This is kind of an aside, but do you ever see that video about introducing wolves back into Yellowstone and how they created, I think they call it a trophic cascade, where the wolves, just their presence scared the shit out of the elk that stayed away from the open spaces and forced them back into the forest, which allowed like the willows and all the riparian vegetation to get thicker and grow deeper, which then caused like the rivers to be more sinuous and like it's these things that kind of build upon each other almost.
And so it's important too for like, there's been some studies on sharks in Western Australia, I believe, and it's looking at how just the presence of predators like sharks alters things like sea turtles, which are grazers, so green sea turtles, which, they graze the seagrass beds and keep them kind of in check. And so they actually have done studies where they look to see like if there's absence of predators, how does that actually affect like how much seagrass there is. And you think about it, so you think about like, okay, even if the predator isn't going to attack you, you still know it's a predator, so you're not making yourself vulnerable. And I always say, okay, so you're driving down the road, you're going the speed limit, you see a cop car. It's not dealing with you. You like go, am I breaking any laws? Like, do I have, am I going the, so like, just their mere presence affects your behavior and might make you alter it. And so that's kind of like how a key species could be, like if in certain interactions,
Do sharks eat sea turtles?
They can eat smaller sea turtles. It's not super common, but they can because they have strong enough jaws to break through the shells.
Oh, I was gonna say pooping out a whole shell would be brutal.
Yeah, so they don't assimilate it, but So it's not super common as far as we know, but
There seems to be
it's really
easier
the
meals.
only it's one of the only natural predators, non-human predators of
Right.
full-grown sea turtles.
Huh.
Gotcha.
Because right,
Yeah.
and leatherbacks are 8 feet long, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean,
For sure.
Megalodon back in
but
the day,
they
maybe.
start so
Yeah,
like all
maybe.
sea turtles hatch out of eggs that are about the size of a ping pong ball.
And I think everyone's seen like the horror show of videos of all the babies running,
Oh,
and like
down,
the birds just
yeah.
like
Mhm.
It's actually
buffet.
like it's those I find those like kind of fascinating because it's this whole food chain happening, like this
Sure.
natural, right? And it's I see it both ways because as a sea turtle biologist and conservationist,
You're like,
right, we want all like
yeah.
the statistic is 1 out of every 1,000 sea turtle eggs laid will make it to adulthood to reproduce
1 out of
themselves.
1,000.
God,
Damn.
that's crazy.
And so, right, like seeing crabs and birds come down and like swoop down and pick up these babies, you're like, oh, that could have been one of the 1,000.
Oh
But
my God, that's heartbreaking.
the crabs have to eat and the birds have
Sure.
to eat, and that's providing like energy to the rest of the ecosystem
For
and
sure.
nutrients.
Mhm.
And so there's, so like
Yeah.
if
Just
I'm
such a crazy
releasing
statistic.
turtles during a turtle release as part of like working with the nonprofits that I work with, we scare away the birds because we
Yeah.
want to give them the best chance.
Sure.
Stupid birds.
But in general, it's like kind of a really cool thing because it's this natural food web
Yeah,
that you
for
can
sure.
see happening.
Right.
Nobody feels bad when the bears eat the salmon swimming upstream.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's so
True.
cool. But it's
Yeah.
the same thing,
well,
right?
so this is actually, maybe we should table this for when we actually get to sea turtles,
Mhm.
but this is something we talked about a little bit, that sea turtles are a flagship species. So
Yeah.
this kind of goes with key species, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Let's tie it into
It's
that.
kind of like a different type of key species.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah.
It's something that humans identify with in some way, that it's somebody's favorite animal, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
my niece.
Yeah, yeah. So there are many species that are like that can really illustrate some of these huge
Yeah.
problems. And
Shout out to Aaliyah.
yeah, those are things that are really difficult
Yeah.
to deal with otherwise.
So we're like the key species in, like we were talking about before, would be one that has like a really strong like ecological impact or like
Mhm.
impact within its natural environment. Where like a flagship species is one that people generally like that can be like
Mm.
Right.
sea turtles are important for trimming, seagrass beds. They're important for eating jellies. Like no one's gonna rally behind an organization that's like save the jellies.
Right.
Right, right.
I mean, some people
Although
will.
I do love them.
Like they're cool,
They're
but
awesome.
like you don't.
Blobfish, my flagship species.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wait, we're gonna talk about the blobfish in just a second.
And so you think like the World Wildlife Fund.
yeah,
They
for
have
sure.
their
Pandas.
iconic panda
Fuck
because
pandas.
people are.
I love pandas.
Why?
They're so cute. They're kind of terrible organisms, but they're very adorable.
And so sea turtles are often flagship species because people identify with them and have
Sure.
positive. And so like we
Right.
want to keep the ocean healthy so we can save the sea turtles. It also saves, fish and
Right.
crabs
Yeah,
and
yeah.
shrimp and things that
Yeah,
people
yeah.
are like, oh, that's delicious. Okay, you want to eat that? Let's use the sea turtles. So there's
Yeah,
Makes sense.
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, now that we've had this lovely blobfish segment, let's move into our next
I want to actually.
segment, which
Oh,
is
man.
woo,
Someday.
this cool thing now exists, and this is a slightly different thing than I normally do for this segment, but this cool thing is a whole bunch of new species. So in planning out this episode, I basically looked for newly discovered species, and if you just Google this, like new species discovered, there's tons of shit. It's like page after page of new discoveries, and it's super cool. There's a whole bunch of them. I have a couple of examples that I can bring up here. So we have
Ooh.
a new blue-winged parrot
Wow.
that is in the Amazon. Whoops, not that one. And 4 new species of burrowing frogs found in India.
Wow.
And there's a whole bunch of different ones if you just Google this. And I ended up finding this super cool video that we're going to look at in a second. But I'm going to list a bunch of these first because there's crazy ones. Relevant to what we are doing right now, a new high-altitude yeast that is good for brewing was discovered. It's
High
really
altitude
going to
yeast?
change the way we brew beer at high altitude.
Oh.
Something like that.
Excellent.
We have a dry forest sabreing, a new hummingbird species that's in Brazil.
That's
We
crazy.
have 3 new species of chameleon. We have chameleons we had them in the first image, but I think they were hidden. But 3 new species of chameleon discovered in Central Africa. A new species
Wait, in
of
Central Africa?
yeah.
I thought they were only in Madagascar.
Chameleons? No.
No?
No. There are many of those that are only on Madagascar, but not
Oh.
chameleons. Yeah.
All right.
They're, yeah,
cool.
They're all over. New species of early snake, which I was like, what does that mean? But I think it's like a slightly more primitive snake.
Yeah.
Maybe
A
it's a little
snake
bit
with
more
hips. Ooh.
Snake with hips.
It likes to dance.
5 new species of the world's largest tree genus found on Sulawesi in Indonesia. New species of jelly, new species of crab, all kinds of stuff. So take a look, Google new species discovered. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can look at. It's really, really cool. And specifically, we wanted to talk about this one really funny sort of iteration of new species discovered.
Gotta go put the smack down on those dogs.
There's new dogs that are being discovered
Snack.
nearby.
Yeah.
Snack.
So we have this video that details a whole bunch of new species discovered in an abyss off the coast of Australia.
Awesome.
So
Australia has the coolest and most terrifying animals.
Oh, totally.
It's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. They have that reputation for sure. Yeah. So for that, we're gonna go into the deep.
Ooh, excellent.
Into
So
the deep.
we are now in the deep ocean. Maybe not that deep. It's a coral reef, so not super deep. But we're gonna go a little bit deeper.
It's beautiful.
With the yeah, I love this image.
I like it.
Yeah, it's really
This
nice.
is really nice in the desert.
Oh,
See,
yeah.
people are always confused why I'm in the desert. So
I
you
know,
see
right?
turtles? Look, there's right here.
You're right here. You're in the middle of the ocean.
Dude, my
right
sister
now.
found a turtle in her backyard
Yeah.
not too long ago.
There's a lot of land turtles
But it
that
was-
just show up in people's yards here.
She thinks it was a derby turtle because it's a box turtle and it had like stuff painted on its shell.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like, fuck this turtle. And
A
just,
lot of people who have turtles that live in their yard will actually mark them
In case they get
so
out.
that so that they know who's who.
yeah, not this one.
Because they'll end up having like half a dozen of them
Right.
living in their backyard.
Yeah.
So.
And then she had a goat show up in her driveway.
Yeah.
These are true stories.
Crazy. Yeah.
Interesting.
Amazing biodiversity in
Mhm.
Albuquerque, New
Yeah.
Mexico.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. So okay, so we've got a bunch of newly discovered species in an abyss off the coast of Australia, and we're gonna watch a little video of this.
You almost got it that time.
There are some lovely jokes in here because some of the animals that were found were quite humorous.
Panasia.
So, all right, let's take a look at this video.
Meet the faceless fish. It's got no eyes and it's ugly as sin. It's just one of the terrifying creatures found by scientists exploring the abyss off the coast of Australia. The expedition of the RV Investigator, led by Museums Victoria, delved kilometres below the surface of the ocean to learn about the species within. Most of it was either gelatinous or the spiky lizard fish of your nightmares, but they also found adorable coffin fish and the famously ugly and cranky-looking blobfish. And then there was this. Known as the peanut worm, that's peanut, it's a deep-sea worm with a head that retracts when threatened. Ironically enough, it can reproduce asexually. If that's not your speed, there were also red spiny crabs, the terrifying cookie cutter shark, and giant anemone-sucking sea spiders. Australia might be known for its strange wildlife, but we're pretty sure we'll never sleep again. Just when we thought it was safe to go back in the water.
Crazy. Oh
So
my God.
cool.
Did you ever go listen?
So crazy. I just love the ironically it can reproduce
Yeah.
asexually. It's like it looks like a penis, folks.
Yeah.
Like they're
Right.
really
In case you
Yeah.
didn't see
Yeah.
that yourself,
in
we want
case
to
you
make sure
couldn't
it's
quite
clear.
figure that out. Yeah. So funny. I was just so glad that like they actually made the joke.
Yeah.
Because it's so obvious that like if they didn't, I'm like, really?
They're
Yeah.
Really?
they're Australian. I feel like that's
Yeah,
in their
right.
national
For sure.
character.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I've seen a picture of that. I saw pictures of that without any kind of like description or
Yeah.
caption, just like all over like Facebook and Twitter,
Totally.
like everywhere. And I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder what that is. He sent me that video, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
What do you know?
Yeah. Crazy. From
I wonder if
from
it'll
the
be-
abyss.
I wonder what its scientific name is and if it's named after somebody.
Oh,
Mm.
that might be very telling. About that person.
It'd be like Wormus johnsonus or something. So are you gonna find a new species of sea turtle?
No.
That'd be
That
awesome.
would be really cool.
Yeah.
I work on a really specific population of sea turtles, so
How's your beer?
they, no, I don't think so. That's not, I mean, that'd be really cool if,
Yeah, it would.
like, magically we found more sea turtles and maybe
Yeah.
they're out there and we just don't know. So, who knows, but no, probably not.
Darn. I mean, they found new hummingbirds, new parrots,
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
and a new
But
chameleon.
like a lot of these were in the Amazon too, which is like
Right.
one of the richest ecosystems. Probably
I mean,
probably the richest ecosystem.
One of them.
Maybe besides the ocean in
Yeah.
general.
The population of sea turtles that I study was thought to be locally extinct in the Eastern Pacific Ocean until 2007. So we kind of like, it's a population of a species, so it was kind of like I didn't rediscover it. Colleagues
Right.
of mine rediscovered it.
Gotcha.
But that's probably as close as we're going to get is finding them a new habitat and being like, oh, hey, we thought you were gone. Glad you're still here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Nice.
there's a lot to learn still.
Steve Squad had a really funny comment. Ugly as sin, but has a great personality.
Excellent.
That blobfish, that's why it's a flagship species.
Yeah.
So,
I could totally imagine people wearing T-shirts with
Oh,
like
totally.
blobfish
Yeah.
backs on them and a big picture of it.
for sure, yeah. I mean,
I would
there's like
rock.
the world's ugliest dog competition.
And cat and
Yeah, like so people are sort of weirdly charmed by things that are very beautiful and also
Yeah.
very ugly.
It's really the kind of like mediocre looking animals. People
yeah,
are
they,
like,
they just
whatever.
kind of they get let go for sure.
Couldn't you play like, what's the game? It's got a crude name, but like fuck, marry, kill. It'd be like
Oh, yeah.
blobfish, penis worm. What else? What was the hagfish or
You
something?
do like eat, conserve.
There you go.
Yeah.
Eat, conserve.
Throw into the furnace.
Yeah.
Just kill the thing. Oh god, yeah, I don't know.
I'll add that as a chapter to my PhD.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's like monkfish is super ugly, but that's also super delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never had it, but it's one that is often
I've had it.
used in restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an eat for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
So-
nowhere to go after this.
I know.
Well, like
Yeah.
lobsters and crabs are like bugs of the sea, and people
Totally.
love them. You know.
Right,
The
yeah,
first
yeah.
person was very brave.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
That's a
whose
good
idea
one,
was it to
actually.
be like, I know, I'm gonna take that thing with all the legs and rip one off and eat
Yeah,
it.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
dip it in
Sounds
butter.
delicious.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but maybe that was
butter
it. I
makes
bet I could dip that in
everything
butter.
taste delicious. Yeah, there you go. That's interesting though, because like there's a lot of people who are trying to get people to eat bugs now.
Yeah.
Because it's a fantastic protein source.
Mhm.
But,
Easy to
like,
grow.
People have this weird, connotation with them, and
Yeah.
calling things like shrimp and lobster and
Sea
crabs
bugs.
sea bugs. Like that's actually a really
Although my
good
entomologist
intermediary.
friends will be upset about calling
Totally.
them bugs, but
Yeah, yeah.
That's where bugs came
They're
from,
really
though.
not,
Crustaceans.
They're not bugs, but
Yeah.
they're bug adjacent.
Yeah. No, I know
So,
that. Yeah.
But yeah. All right. So to wrap up this lovely segment of ugly and funny species, what are your guys' coolest, weirdest, or funniest, or ugliest, or whatever species that you know about?
So I love the California sea slug or California sea hare. They're just like giant slugs that live in the ocean. And I used to
Awesome.
work, I mentioned this before, it's called the Living Coast Discovery Center. It's this really awesome small nonprofit zoo and aquarium in South San Diego Bay. And they have all native species to San Diego area, so you can go and like learn about what's in your local area.
It
And
looks
so it's a
kind
sea
of like a
slug.
shell.
And it's so cool. And so we have
That's
some,
crazy.
I keep hitting the microphone, sorry. Just, like, making sure you're paying attention.
Yeah, you know.
Hello,
Yeah.
is this thing on? And so they can they're usually like about this big, like a big potato size, but they're super like gelatinous. They're really, really soft. But one time the CFO like who's able to collect in the bay and bring stuff in for us, he found one that was the size of a watermelon. And
Damn.
it was so cool. We had it like in our back little like tide pool area. And you could like try to pick it up. And it was the size of the water. It was so cool.
Oh
And
my god.
I learned that I knew that they like sexually reproduce, but they're hermaphroditic. But one time when I was working there, I had to go grab some sea slugs for like I was doing, I don't know, some kind of education program with little kids. And so I went into the back and there was like a couple like stacked on top of each other. and I pulled one, and I pulled one out of another one. They were
Oh.
totally doing it, and I was like, I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
And so I put the sea slug, like, I tried to, like, put it back where it was and then pick something else. And I, like, walked out and I went to my coworker and I was like, I just cock-blocked a sea slug.
Yeah.
That was a thing you can do. But I was
Oh my
like,
God.
and so I was looking it up, and it turns out when they're reproducing, they'll just make, like, chains and just, like, lay on top of
Oh
each
my
other, and they can be male
It's
and
an
female.
orgy.
That's crazy.
But
it's
yeah,
like a
so
sea slug
I'm
orgy.
putting that on my CV. Actually,
There
you
I
go.
have searching
Nice.
for postdoc. I have cock blocked a sea slug.
Right.
That's in your the
Social skills
applications or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't follow that story.
Yeah.
I should have gone first. Damn.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my god, that's crazy. We have a couple of funny comments here. So, hey Brandon. Hi. Welcome.
Hello.
And
Can I
oh
have
my
another
god,
beer?
someone saved
Yeah,
these
of
people.
course.
They are drowning. Oh no.
Uh,
Drowning in the sea.
Oh yeah.
you have a
But
gold,
we are now one
a
with the sea,
pail.
apparently.
Oh wow.
and a brown.
I'll do a pail.
Yeah, I think that's the best
Yeah,
choice,
yeah,
honestly.
they're pretty good. Yeah, and also take that sea slug. Nature
Yeah.
likes to get freaky.
Dude,
That's
nature's a
true.
dirty,
So-
dirty.
It's very true.
This is
It's very
Not
true.
like a weird animal, but so sea turtles.
I waved at nothing like
Yeah.
that. We saw it.
Yes. Sea turtles breathe air because they're reptiles, and they spend pretty much their entire lives in the ocean, and so they reproduce in the ocean.
Mm.
And males' bottom shells, which we call their plastron, are actually like curved up more.
Ooh.
Okay.
And females' top shell is a little bit flatter, so the males can fit on top of the females better.
Ah.
Adult males
Spooning.
have a really long tail because their penis kind of comes out of part of the tail.
Oh.
And the females have a really short tail, so it doesn't get in the way when they're trying to mate. And males also have nails on their flippers that they like hook onto the female. And so male turtles will come onto a female, and male turtles will basically hump anything. Like there's
Really?
anecdotal evidence,
Those
like
dirty
anecdotal
turtles.
stories from turtleologists who are studying mating sea turtles. And you'll see a male come up and I'll start like humping the oar on the kayak, or like it'll just basically be like, "You look like I could mate with you."
Something flat.
Yeah. And anyway, so the males hook onto the females, and the females frantically have to keep them both above water so they don't die,
Oh.
because they have to breathe air.
Oh right.
And
yeah.
so if you're ever like off the coast of Florida, like you can see them, they're just like, you see all these like frantic splashing, and it's just the females trying to keep them alive while they're doing it.
They're like, hurry up back there.
And male
Yeah.
turtles will come and like bumper car other males off a female. Sometimes a male will hook onto another male who's onto a female because
Oh my
again,
gosh,
it's just like,
right.
I think I can hump you.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we don't know how to age sea turtles. There's no way that we know how old they are unless we know when they were born. But we can kind of tell how long a female's been in the game by how much scar tissue she has because from
Oh.
mating. So
Ooh,
anyway,
that's brutal.
I don't know how I got there. Oh, sea slugs stacking up
Yeah,
on top
yeah,
of
yeah.
each other. There we
There
go.
you
Segues.
We went to.
Well, another story I can't top. Fuck.
Yeah.
You're killing me here.
Well, let's have your crazy.
Yeah, I wanna hear your
animal
animal.
then.
So I took an invertebrate zoology class in undergrad.
This is
And-
delicious. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
damn.
it's
That's
good.
really
Really
good.
good beer.
Santa Fe Pale Ale. There you go.
But invert zoology is probably my favorite undergrad class I ever took, because we think of invertebrates as being less evolved and kind of basic, but that's so not true. Like, they're bananas, dude. They can do things.
are really
Yeah, they're so amazing. And my favorite one, I did a report on it. It's the Osidex. It's whale fall specialists. They are these little sea worms that.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, there we go.
Look how little.
2 millimeters.
Wow.
So what they do is they
That's
actually
that's
eat
crazy.
the fat inside of whale skeletons, inside the bones. And what they do is the worm latches onto the bone, secretes an acid that eats into the bone, and then the worm itself is filled with anaerobic bacteria that eat the fat but can't do the burrowing, really. So
Crazy.
it's really two species in one, right?
Yeah.
Because the worm
right.
can't live without the microbe, and the microbe can't live without the
Yeah.
worm. And
Symbiosis.
all of the big ones, and big is relative, right? Because it's 2 millimeters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the big ones,
Where can I get one of those? Asking for a friend.
all of the big ones are females, and the males are microscopic and live inside, and just they mooch off the female's food eating and just squirt out juices, and they
That's
make more.
crazy.
Yeah.
What are
And
they called again?
Osidax?
Osidax?
Osidax
That's the-
muciflorus, bone-eating
That's
snotworm.
the Bone-eating snotworm.
Bone-eating snotworm or
Wow.
bone-eating
Or bone-eating
snotflower.
That's a really
Flower,
good insult
too,
for
yeah.
someone.
Yeah.
I know,
You're
right?
bone-eating snotworm.
That's
And-
very like Shakespearean.
Yeah.
You know.
And every time, in every paper I read, which was not all of the papers because I was an undergrad and didn't give a shit,
Sure.
every time they looked, they found new species, right?
really
Like
cool.
Right. That's crazy.
everywhere.
You're
Yeah.
never alone. You even have things living in you, helping you
That's
digest.
true.
Symbiotic
That's
sea
very
janitors,
true.
yeah.
That's exactly what they are. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So then mine is a little bit appropriate, I guess, just because I'm an anthropologist. I have an eye, which
Mm.
I'm now putting it up, and it's
Oh,
a
cute.
nightmare creature.
I think it's cute.
Um,
It's got kind of scary eyes.
Yeah.
You
there's-
can't
so
see its
this
middle
is-
finger there.
Yes, so you can.
Oh.
It's kind of a crappy photo I found, but so this is a sort of lemur adjacent species. It's kind of its own thing. Rough night, yeah, for sure. They live on Madagascar. They're only found on Madagascar, and these guys are this sort of crazy nocturnal species where they eat mostly insects, and they have this really long middle finger. You can kind of see it in the image. It's this really long middle finger that, with a claw on it that
And
they
it can-
use to get into small holes to sort of get bugs out of them, and they have a tooth comb that also allows them to like scoop things off of trees. It's pretty crazy.
Am I remembering correctly that the joint right here is not
It is
like we have
yeah.
a whatever that's called
Right.
joint, but they have a ball joint there, so they
Yeah,
can
so
like
it's
rotate
like-
it like
it's
an
Kind of
arm.
like an
Yeah.
opposable thumb, but
Right.
a
Yeah.
middle finger.
Yeah.
I mean,
And it's really skinny and creepy and long.
Yeah, it's real. It's long as fuck. It's like their normal fingers. You know, if their normal fingers are this length, their middle finger is like out to
Oh,
here.
wow.
It's crazy.
have you? I just saw it circling on the internet somewhere. I don't know if it was a real advertisement or like a parody one, but it was a thing you strap on your hand and it gives you an extra finger so
I
it can
saw
like
that.
scroll without your arm getting tired.
What?
The
And there
third
was, like,
thumb.
God.
Yeah, and like it's like an extra thumb that goes off the other side of your hand, and like you can tell it to move, and it'll like scroll, and that's what that makes me think of. It's like
Dude.
humans.
I can't wait.
Humans
They sh-
weird.
Like,
Yeah.
did they
weird.
not call it the eye? Like, they should have called
Yeah,
it the eye.
they should have.
Like,
Yeah.
I want
Missed opportunity.
Humans are a pretty weird species.
I want
too.
2
Yeah.
extra ones, so I have
Yeah,
12
right.
fingers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
so crazy. Oh my god.
Just think of all the cool handshakes you could come up with.
For sure. On that note, I have to pee. Does anybody else have
Bathroom
to
break.
pee?
And I've got to yell at these stupid dogs.
Yeah, we've got
Aw.
dogs that are going a little crazy at the moment.
They want to have a good time
They
too.
want to
They
come
wanna
hang
come
out
hang out.
with us, so maybe we'll let them come back. But we're going to take a quick potty break to get rid of this booze that's going through us, and we'll be right back. Stick around. Okay.
A fish.
Sorry, we were muted. I apologize.
Oh.
We are now there.
We're-
Hello.
So we
Hello, we are
we
here.
avoided our bowels.
I made a joke about voiding our bowels and you didn't get to hear it. Damn it. It was embarrassing. They
It's all
didn't even
falling
hear
apart.
it. We could have just been totally fine.
Oh, I meant to turn off the light.
But we also learned that sea cucumbers, no, leave it on.
Leave it on?
Yes. Sea cucumbers shoot out their poop as a defense mechanism.
Well, like their insides, like not just their
Oh.
poop. Like they can
Oh,
shoot
wow.
out like what was their
Their
intestines, like their
guts?
version of their guts.
Ugh.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, and then they regrow them.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, Google it to verify.
Sure.
No, I saw it on an
But
episode
I,
of
yeah,
I think like Wild Boys with Steve-O
No.
back in the day.
yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds right.
I've-
But like, right, if I got pooped on, I'd be like, all right, you can go.
Yeah, right.
That's a pretty
I'm
good.
good now. Yeah.
Never have a child.
Well,
Yeah, you know.
when
Just
you,
leave it
when
on the
you've
porch.
created it, I guess it's a different thing,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, you know. Even with the dogs, like if they like
No.
vomit everywhere, I'm like,
No.
this is gross, but also I love you.
you know.
You know. So.
All right, so maybe pooping
Anyway.
is not a great way to escape.
Right.
Don't take my advice.
I loved that show, Classy.
Wild Boys, yeah.
It was as dumb as it could be, but it was hilarious.
All right. Well, now that we're back from our potty break and we have mics and everything, and I realize that I may or may not have been muted this whole time, so maybe you didn't get to hear any of my vocal genius.
You're just flipping them off
so,
the whole time.
So sad. I was just like, oh. And you can hear me. I'm not sure what's happening, but anyway. Okay, we're gonna move on
I
to
think
our
new segment. Guess what we're talking about.
That's actually a pretty good idea.
Guess what we're talking about?
Yeah,
This
like
would be
turn it on
super
mute. You have
animated.
to like act it out or something.
Yeah.
Performance
Science
dance.
charades.
Yeah.
I'm into that. Okay. I'm
Science
gonna put
charade.
a pin in that one.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. All right, we're gonna move on to our main event.
Woo.
And this is where we get to talk a lot more about what Miss Katie does here in the middle. So, ooh, I'm gonna eat that one. So, for that one,
Turtles. Woo.
we're gonna go to the ocean again.
It's hard to throw them far.
Yes.
It's a slightly different one.
Ooh, that's
Ooh.
So we've got some images that we're gonna show, and it makes it look better.
Yeah.
Getting seasick.
But
I get seasick. I'm a
Yeah.
terrible marine biologist. I have to take Dramamine and then occasionally jump in the water.
does that help
Yeah.
to just kind of get?
Although, so like I'm
acclimated?
in estuaries, so like there could be crocodiles and shit, and you're just
Ooh.
like, well, I don't want to throw up, so you jump in the water and you just hope for the best.
Okay.
Chum the waters or be the chum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I made it back. So.
There you
Yeah.
go. That's
All
good.
your limbs.
Yeah.
I just
I count
remember when
10
we
toes.
were in Mexico, we were in the water a lot, and like the whole time I'm just like, I feel like I'm floating most of the time, and then we got back and it was normal again. It's just kind of weird. But anyway, all right. So for our main topic tonight, we're mostly going to talk about the sea turtle research that you do, but specifically within the context of threats to biodiversity. So our main topic tonight, biodiversity, why it's important, and I think one of the more important topics within that is threats to biodiversity and
Yeah.
what we can do about it. So to kind of move into what we're going to talk about with your sea turtle research, what do we think or know are the greatest threats to biodiversity?
Us is what we do as humans is a really, really big threat to biodiversity. There are extinctions are happening really at a fast rate.
Yeah.
We're in the fifth.
At the fastest rate since the dinosaurs, and a lot of that is human generated.
Right.
Sure.
Like for example, sea turtles have been around for like 200 million years, and most of the species are threatened or endangered
Because of us.
because of humans.
Yeah.
Is the primary reason. So things like just in general, things like habitat loss, unsustainable harvesting of like fisheries, of hunting, destruction of land use, or destruction of land for alternative uses, like for farmland and things,
Development.
pollution, just not taking care of this rock that we're floating around on, that we don't have another option. So it's important that we do take care of it. But there's the biggest is, I think, to me, a big thing is like pollution, because I think that's something that we can have a really strong positive impact on if we take some time to think about it a little more.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that a little more as we go
Yeah,
into
for sure.
my paper and what I study. But yeah, like farming, raising animals to eat, habitat destruction, unsustainable fisheries, unsustainable harvesting, just in general, like palm oil, for example.
Right, that's a big one.
And so those are kind of the bigger things, I think. I don't know if anyone. Climate change is kind of in there because a lot of these actions that we do
are also
contributing
right,
to climate
for
change.
sure.
So there's as you noticed, that list is pretty much human.
Yeah,
humans.
for sure. Yeah.
I would say, and this might sound like inflammatory at first, but it's not really, the developing third world. Simply because there's a huge chunk of the world's population is aiming to increase its resource consumption and like elevate their standard of living, which you can't blame any of them for, right?
Sure, yeah.
But that means that they need raw materials, and raw materials are trees and farmland and more oil to make fertilizer, right? Like there's a lot of things that to lift billions of people out of poverty, you're going to have to wreck a lot of shit, basically.
Right.
And that's not good.
And a lot of those...
that's a double-edged sword, right?
A lot of those places don't have infrastructure, like don't have
Sure.
trash service. Like I study these critically endangered species, and the locals are really such a huge positive part of the work I do, and none of what I do would be possible without their help and their collaboration. But they live on these remote islands in Central America, and they don't have trash service. So this is critical nesting habitat for sea turtles, and it's mangrove estuaries, which is critical habitat for a lot of juvenile fishes and sharks and lots of other animals as well. It's a huge biodiversity. And they have to burn their trash, and when the high tides come up, they take it and it goes right out into the water. And it's not that they don't have an option.
Yeah.
They don't have, there's no trash service. Like,
Right.
I complain about where I live. I have to drive my recycling to the recycling center
for
to
sure.
drop it off.
Yeah.
But like, they don't even have, like, there's no trash service.
Yeah.
So everything is just in a pile. And so they know that it's not great, but they don't have any options. And so that's part of it too, is like, they're getting these more resources, so they're using more things. But the infrastructure to now, what do we do with them?
Yep.
That has to come
Is
with
a
it.
big part of it too.
Yeah, definitely. And that's just what's happening currently. We, like, in the West, whatever that means, already did all of that,
I mean,
so,
we do use way too many resources.
Yeah, like an obscene amount.
Yeah.
Especially in the U.S., like, we use way more than a lot of other already developed areas as well.
Stupid dogs.
But we have a good question from Classy Bathrobe. If all humans suddenly disappeared, would the planet be able to recover at this point?
So there are different, right? You hear of like the Mesozoic era, and like that's the only one I can think of because I'm not a paleontologist.
Paleozoic.
But like all the they're calling the one that we're in the Anthropocene.
Yep.
And anthro, right, being human. And so basically we are leaving our trace. So like plastic debris, especially small like plastic microbeads, are basically going to be around almost forever. So if we left now, a lot of things would probably be able to recover. But like if our civilization totally dies out, like the Mayans or something, people will come back. Or like if aliens come find us, or come find Earth, they'll look through it, and our trash is going to be our legacy at this point, which is sad.
Which is the whole reason why archaeology exists, too. It's like, it sounds kind of silly, but a lot of it is looking at people's trash.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So all of the species that exist on the planet today made it through the end of the Ice Age, right? With huge, crazy climactic swings within like a super short time frame. So yeah, like the species will survive. They might be like reduced to such a number that they collapse eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
But for the most part, yeah, the planet would be fine, right?
Wall-E is right, for sure.
I mean,
yeah, it's not that far off, to be perfectly honest. We need a global search history failsafe so aliens don't see what we Googled when we're all gone.
dude, they would just be aghast. Wouldn't they?
Oh, I know.
Horrified.
So this is kind of off topic, but I read somewhere once someone had made a comment that like A thing that would be really interesting as an alien would be to come to Earth and see people working out in gyms. Like, it's just humans running on a conveyor belt.
Right.
Or like,
and they're like, but they keep hamsters in their house.
yeah, or like
Yeah.
humans lifting a bar up and down over their head
Yep.
repeatedly. Like, anyway, that's what that made me
That's
think of, is
interesting,
that,
yeah.
like, aliens coming and being like, what is happening?
Have you seen that episode of Black Mirror? Where they're logging hours on a bike or a treadmill,
Yeah.
and it's actually producing energy. It's like,
Cool.
why can't we do that?
Yeah.
Like, actually produce some energy.
I've seen that at
from all the
museums and
hours
stuff.
on
You like ride a
treadmills.
bike and a light bulb turns on.
Yeah, there you go.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You gotta pedal your ass off for that little light bulb.
totally. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Kate is going to have a AI episode,
we are.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
and that's one of the first things the AI would do, right? Is download the contents of the internet to understand human behavior.
Totally. Including our browser
So
history.
weird.
And they're like, those people will masturbate to anything. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be crazy.
God, you get to like Imager and
Mm-hmm.
all those, and you get like to the very like the end of the internet.
Oh yeah.
Depraved.
The dark web,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, definitely. But so these are all things that are important topics when we're talking about biodiversity, because these are all things that can very severely affect what species get to survive, what ecosystems get to survive. And so I guess that brings me to your paper. And we have the pleasure of actually having the person who did this research that we're talking about today. So that's really cool. So if you guys have questions about what the paper is or whatever, she's the person to ask. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But we are talking about your paper about anthropogenic debris,
Yep.
which is a
Debris.
fancy way of saying human trash,
Yep.
being ingested by sea turtles.
Yeah. So you probably know the term marine debris. It's thrown around a lot in popular media, on the news. I like to use anthropogenic debris because it's human generated, and
Yeah.
anthropogenic actually means human generated, and I like having that right there in the word, because then it gives us the responsibility
Totally.
right off the bat, because
Yeah,
it
for
is our
sure.
trash. And so this paper was a very glamorous study to do. I spent hours and hours in a windowless lab. My colleagues in Hawaii had sent me literally little jars of sea turtle guts that had been, so all the sea turtles had died as accidental bycatch in fisheries. And so bycatch is the animals you accidentally catch when you're fishing that are not your target species. So if you're fishing for tuna and you catch a turtle, or you're fishing for tuna and you catch some other kind of species of fish, anything that's not tuna that's your target is bycatch. And even though sea turtles are protected within the United States, fisheries do have a legal limit of how much of this bycatch, this accidental take, that they're
I see.
allowed to have. And they work really closely with the management agencies like NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, to actually monitor like how much of this is actually being taken.
Sure.
And we learn from them. So over the years since 1999, they've been, well, since before then, but the samples that were sent to me were turtle stomachs that had been in formalin since 1999.
So they just.
Ooh.
So they smell delicious, as
Oh,
one
I'm
might
sure.
imagine.
Yeah.
So I read your paper, right? And that was my question. Like, they just gutted these turtles, and then they're like, leave it
So
there.
they did necropsies. So a
Yeah.
necropsy, if you don't know, is like an autopsy on a non-human. So they did necropsies, and they took lots of different samples for lots of different studies. And one of the things they did is they just kept the guts in case somebody wanted to do something with them.
Sure.
So my colleague in
Oh,
Hawaii,
they just did it. Just
they
in
every
case.
time when they get a turtle, they take different samples from it, so we can learn from it.
Okay.
It's pretty similar to what you would take for an autopsy too. It's like you're taking a
Why did
standard
like we
list
knew why they
of
died.
samples.
They drowned in these fisheries is why they
Right.
died. But they want to know, okay, well, like, what have they been eating? What's their like?
Right.
Are they healthy? Like, what is the like the different levels? Like when you get blood run, right? Like they can test that on the turtles, and they can take skin samples and try to figure out where the turtles have been previously, and they can do so. There's a lot of
That's cool.
there's a lot we can learn from it. So it's really right, instead of just like having these animals die and just
Right.
not have anything happen, we can at the very least we can learn from them. So my colleague in Hawaii contacted me and was like, hey, I have some turtle stomachs, are you interested? And at the time I was working on all of Ridley sea turtles and was going to do a different kind of study with them, but that was kind of focused on what are they eating and where. And I was like, sure. And he's like, oh, I have like 10 turtles I can send you. So I was like, great. So he sends me the 10 turtles. And he's like, I have some more turtles. And so it ended up being 71 turtles. This was supposed to be like a summer side project.
Yeah.
And anyone who's ever done a side project knows that that's never the case.
Never how it works, yeah.
Been there.
So like,
This right here is a side project for me.
so
It's taking over my
it ended
life.
up being
so.
71 turtles, 4 different species, mostly olive ridleys and green turtles. And it was literally jars of their guts in formalin. And some were from 1999. I think they were from 1999 to 2010 or something.
It was
Yeah.
18
2000
years.
18
Yeah.
years total.
So,
yeah.
and so yeah, so I just kept getting these boxes, and like the mail people would drop them off in the lab, and it would say like turtle guts. And someone was like, "What is it?" And one of the people that worked there was asking me, and they only spoke Spanish, and they asked me, and I speak Spanish, but I didn't really know how to say guts, so I just said it was like turtle poop. And so they were like, "Here's another box of turtle poop," because
Yep.
it's essentially pre-poop.
And they're like,
Yeah.
I don't want to look at that,
Yeah.
so you're safe.
So I got these different samples, and basically my initial idea with the project was, what are they eating? Like, I was just curious, like, what kind of fish and invertebrates, like, what's their diet like?
Right.
So I went into it, and I was spending hours in this windowless lab in the, like, chemical hood because of the formalin and because they're, like, 18-year-old turtle guts, which
Filthy.
do not smell fabulous.
I have a picture
I was
of
actually...
you with some turtle.
Oh yeah, that's a Hawksbill turtle in Nicaragua.
Nice.
So actually there's...
Nice.
I was quoted in a BuzzFeed recap of this like Twitter conversation of the most rank smelling animal things, and turtle guts was like really high on the list.
Really?
Yeah.
I would say decomposing skunk.
Yeah, that's probably really bad.
We
I've
should
had
have
an
a
opportunity
what's
for
the
that.
most disgusting smell you've ever
For
smelled.
sure.
But after all this.
Yeah. So mine is
totally.
definitely like
Food
old,
equals
so
pre-poop, totally
old
true.
dead turtle guts that I then bake in a drying oven for 24
Ooh,
hours.
nice.
Opening that drying oven after 24
Real
hours is delicious.
You're
Yeah.
one of maybe 6 people in the world
Yeah,
that's ever
right?
smelled that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
So just think of, right? Just think of like the grossest fart you smelled, but
Yeah,
then preserve that for 18 years and then bake it in an oven. Like that's essentially what it is.
Anyone else hungry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hug.
We actually have a few questions.
Okay.
There's a
I'm gonna ban
raid.
you. Oh, there's a raid? Oh
Yeah,
my
and
god.
you just deleted his
Oh my
message.
god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
I just did fart in
Fart
my
in a microwave. Oh my god, hang on. Unban. I clicked the wrong button. I was trying to see who you were.
All right, so real quick,
So sad. Hang
is
on
there
one
really an island of trash in the sea?
So it's not an island like you could stand on it. Like they often say that it is like an island in the sea. So it's really, really large, but the particles are a lot smaller because so plastic will break down, but it doesn't really ever go away. So it's not like something that like decomposes naturally will eventually like go back into a natural form because plastic is not is not biodegradable, and so it just gets into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces and will stay around like almost forever. I mean, there are years put on like you can look up graphics on Google, like Surfrider Foundation has a good one of like if you're cleaning up the beach and you find different plastic pieces, like how long do
What do
things take to
you- right.
decompose, and it's like
For
30
sure.
years, 50 years, 90 plus years kinds of a thing. So in the ocean, there's not an island that you can like go stand on, but there is a lot of plastic, and like there are colleagues, the Five Gyres Institute, if you Google Five Gyres, they will talk about the research they do, and they do research cruises out to the Five Gyres, and a gyre is a place in the ocean where all the different currents kind of come together and like pull things together.
We actually have an image of that
Excellent.
we can show.
And
And they'll still be able to hear us
okay.
when we go there. So.
And so what happens is all these currents come together and just kind of compile this all in one area. And this group, the Five Gyres group that has gone out and done these like surveys, they'll look for plankton, and they'll take like a scoop of the ocean water and they'll try to count like the animal versus plastic particles. And in some instances they're finding more plastic than animal particles. So again, it's not like an island you could like go out and see and like stand on and like put a flag on or anything, because I'm sure if you could, somebody would have done that. But it is a lot of trash, and there are 5 gyres, 5 of these areas where the currents all kind of come together and pull things
All right.
in that all have plastic.
You
in
got to
them now.
time this guy.
Yeah.
Just 1 second.
Yeah.
Oh, I
I
did
don't know
it
how to do
for
that.
10 minutes. Sorry
Oops.
about
I don't think you can. I think it always goes to 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, that guy, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, another question, how far can the
right.
debris travel?
Yeah, how far can it go?
That's a really good question. If it gets in a current, I mean, we were getting, so on the Oregon coast, they were getting, from the tsunami that hit Japan, they were getting debris washing up on the Oregon coast. So,
it's kind of far.
That's real far.
Yeah. So it can
Yeah.
travel, and like and they knew that it was coming from there because it was like big pieces of piers with like native little invertebrates that are from like
Right.
Japan waters that were on the
Wow.
piers and washing
Oh,
up on
crazy.
Oregon beaches.
That's insane.
So they can travel pretty far.
How about the bycatching? Is it possible to stop that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's actually there's different kinds of fishing practices that people can do to help reduce bycatch. There's a really awesome app for your phone. There's a website. It's called Seafood Watch, and it's run by the
yeah, I've
Monterey
seen
Bay
that.
Aquarium.
Yeah.
And it will actually list
Is
like
it .org?
I think so.
I can pull it.
But there's an app on your phone now, which is really nice. It used to be just little like cards that you had kept in your wallet. But what it can do is it actually tells you what are the sustainable fisheries, and part of that includes which are the ones that follow the protocols to reduce bycatch. So if you think like, okay, I want to get popcorn.
I agree,
Say you have like popcorn and M&Ms and goldfish in a bowl, right? And you just want the popcorn out
That's
of the bowl.
disgusting,
Well, okay.
by the way.
So you just want to get the popcorn out of it, right? If I use like a big soup spoon or like a big ladle and I just take a big dip in it, I'm going to get a little bit of everything because I'm not being very precise in what I'm focusing on. If I take a fork, I might be able to like go in and shake out some of the smaller things, like say an M&M, but I still might get some of the bycatch. If I take chopsticks and I pick one at a time, then I would be able to just really target what I want. So there are ways, depending on like what kind of fishing nets you use. Does it just collect everything? Does it collect one kind of thing? But for the big, like for shrimp trawling, which is a big problem for sea turtles and a lot of other animals because the shrimp trawl goes in and just like drags along the bottom. There's actually a device called a TED, which is Turtle Excluder Device, that has actually been tested and made and is implemented in U.S. fisheries. And it actually is like basically a trapdoor for sea turtles in shrimp fisheries nets. And so sea turtles will swim into the net and kind of like hit this bar and then be pushed out of a trapdoor.
That's good.
So that they don't drown. Sea turtles can hold their breath for about 3 hours, but only if they're calm, right? When you get freaked out or you're nervous, you breathe faster. And so if a turtle is trapped in a net, it tries to fight, and so it loses its oxygen supply. So there are ways that we can do a way that like we can help and have an impact is to look at like Seafood Watch is a really good resource. It's really awesome. And I remember when I first learned about it like 10 years ago, or I don't know, when it first came out, it was just a card, and now it's like this really awesome app. So if you're at a grocery store, you can say like what's local to my area. You can pick your region and it'll tell you like what's sustainable fish for your area.
They have that for palm oil now too.
Oh, that's cool.
So like palm oil, we did talk about this a little bit before, that it's an unsustainable ingredient that's used in everything, and it is hugely important to, well, palm oil comes from a palm tree, obviously, and a lot of it is coming from Indonesia, which forms the habitats for orangutans. So orangutan habitats are being completely destroyed because of this palm oil harvesting. It also happens in places in Central and South America too, but to a lesser degree. But like there are these same kinds of apps that are trying to help people figure out what products they can buy that don't use palm oil, so you can actually put your money somewhere where it's not going to support this kind of thing. So, yeah, we have a couple questions.
Likelihood of plastic being in existence long enough that a life form can evolve to consume it? It is a hydrocarbon.
Bacteria.
Yeah, I just saw this actually.
But it takes a while, right?
Yeah.
It's so ingrained in the environment and it's in our food chain already. I mean, we're probably eating it at this point, if you eat seafood, at least, because if it's small enough to be like plankton, which it is, and fish are eating that, if fish are eating the plankton and also the plastics and we're eating the fish, we're kind of already eating it. We don't know the impacts of that on like how the bioaccumulation of the plastic in us or in turtles, like what that can do.
Right.
So talking about that, let's circle back to actually what you did. in
Yeah,
your thing.
okay,
So
so-
you had 70-something turtle
So I had
guts.
71 turtle guts that I went through, and I
I
would
took a
literally go through with
picture
like,
from your paper.
oh yeah. So
Love
that's
the
from one
trash.
sea turtle. That's one sea turtle
That's
stomach.
crazy.
So crazy.
There's a red toothbrush there, kind of in the middle. It's broken into 3. It was it was
yeah.
completely intact when I pulled it out of the turtle. It just broke when I was cleaning it off because it was so brittle.
God, that's crazy.
I pulled it out of the turtle, and I had been in the lab all summer, like 8 hours a day, pulling out these different things. And I would have days where I would just leave the lab crying because it was just like plastic everywhere.
Yeah,
and I
that's
would just be
awful.
totally overwhelmed by it. And I remember I pulled that out. I was like, crap, more plastic. Because I just saw it was like this long piece of plastic. But one end of it had like a lot of moss and stuff, or like a lot of stuff on it. And I was like, oh, cool. At least like life found a way.
Right.
And then I cleaned it off, and it was the bristles of the toothbrush.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, oh my god. So yeah, that's all from just one. I think that was from one of the loggerhead stomachs. I think, but I don't.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's from. But that's
That's
4
crazy.
pieces of printer paper for reference. What that picture is of. And it made up a majority of the turtle's diet, so more than 50% of the turtle's diet was plastics. And so my paper started as, what are they eating? I'm interested in the fish and inverts they're
Yeah.
eating, and
Right.
it turned into, holy crap, they're eating a lot of plastic.
Holy
Yeah.
crap.
It was what, 95%?
95%
Of
was
the debris?
was plastic.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess you didn't get to see the turtle after it was dead, but is there any indication that these turtles are malnutrition? They can't.
That's a really good question. So there's a study that I referenced in my paper, and I don't remember the exact statistic, but there was a separate study by some colleagues that had looked at like what's the smallest amount of plastic needed that will actually kill a turtle, and they found a bunch of turtles that they had determined had died because of ingestion of plastics and other anthropogenic debris. So anthropogenic debris is not just plastics; it's usually mostly plastics, but it can be any trash, any human generated
Right.
trash, essentially.
Yeah.
And so, and in the study, I think there was something like my turtles had ingested over 50% or even more plastic than what the critical amount was to kill a turtle.
That's insane.
So like the turtles that I were looking at didn't even die because they had ingested plastics. They had drowned in these fisheries, but they had all this plastic in them, and a really big problem is we don't know what that means. Like, right, we don't know what that means for the turtles. We don't know what that means for us if we're eating things that have
Sure.
plastic in it. It could be that turtles, we think that they're sometimes accidentally mistaking things like plastic bags for jellies,
Oh,
and so they'll
yeah,
eat
yeah,
that.
makes sense.
But it also is like lots of little barnacles and little invertebrates that they like to eat will grow on floating plastic because little invertebrates, what they need is a hard substrate to grow on,
Right.
and plastic works. And so
Sure.
it could be that part of it is they're chomping on the plastic to eat the animals they're intending, and so they're
Yeah.
eating it accidentally.
I
Gross.
see.
And so yeah, so like we don't really know what the cost of having that in your stomach is. There's some studies have thought that maybe, it can decrease their nutrition because it decreases the amount of space they have in their stomach, so they might feel full, so
Right.
they might stop
Can
eating.
they pass it?
This one individual, you said that it was like something like 70+% of
Yeah.
its diet at the time.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So
And
what
so-
what amount of nutrition could actually
Right, and that's something that people
Be
are looking
coming
into.
in.
I have a couple colleagues that are really interested, and that's kind of what their focus is. But yeah, so we think that they can be now. We think that it's definitely possible. So the main threats of eating all that plastic is one, perforation of the intestines,
right?
because a lot of it is sharp.
Yeah.
And then another is the bioaccumulation of the toxins, right? Like we're really big on like BPA free things because we don't want the toxins to leach into our water. Well, they're eating the plastic and it's sitting in their guts. And so we don't know exactly what reactions are happening in there and what they're
Yeah.
accumulating of the
Yeah.
toxins. And then also how much of the stomach is that filling up? And so how much room do they have for actual nutritional food,
Totally.
and how much of their digestive energy is going to trying to deal with the plastics and
Right.
trying to deal with actual food. And I think you asked if they can pass it, and I have colleagues that have pulled balloon strings out of the cloaca of a sea turtle and pulled it all the way out because it's been stuck.
Kinky.
Yeah, and
Ugh.
gross.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Yeah,
that's awful.
so.
On a side note, there's a band playing at a local brewery called Cloacas soon. We saw this flyer. It's like maybe the grossest biological
name.
thing.
It would be
why
if it
would
was
you
like the
do
moist
that?
cloacas. Maybe that'd be worse.
That's maybe the only way that it could be
That's a
worse.
sick punk
So a
band
cloaca,
name.
if you don't know, is when an animal doesn't have like a separate anus and reproductive area.
Yeah.
It's just all the one thing.
Yep.
Everything comes out and goes
Birds have a cloaca. Yep.
in.
Oddly enough, though, when you have an infection in a bone, something that like can form when you have an active infection, you end up with a hole that's like pus filled. That's also called a cloaca.
That's
So
all around,
it's
not a
really
great
gross.
name.
Yeah, it's a really disgusting.
I see
name.
the question.
We have
How
to
long
go.
can
Yeah.
you tell can you tell how long the trash has been in the stomach? Not
Ooh,
really.
that's a really good question.
That's a really good question. As far as I know, we're not able to tell how long it's been in there. If you did enough of these studies, so I just did this one study, as I said, it was kind of a side study that I did that turned into this kind of like a really impactful thing for me personally, really, hopefully for others too. But as far as I know, we can't tell how much or how long it's been in there, and that's also an issue too because we don't know, again, like if it's in there longer, are they taking in more of the toxins? Are
Right.
they more malnourished? So we don't really know. There's a lot we don't know about it, which is a part of it that is like kind of an important thing to realize is we just don't
Sure.
know. We don't know how it's affecting them. We don't know how it's affecting us and the food that we eat.
Right.
And so, the kind of big takeaway from this is like, we really don't know what the impact on this is. And so it's really best to just err on the side of let's try to reduce the cause of this.
Right.
And so like, when I was like, my little one of these is recycling. I think it's this
That one,
one.
Yeah.
Let's see the other one.
It's the Earth.
Oh, I
It's
like
the earth. It's
yeah,
very nice.
I got it
yeah.
at White Sands National Monument,
Nice.
and they're made out of recycled cereal boxes.
Sick. That's awesome.
So like when I was little, right, it was like recycle, reduce, reuse, and there was like a song
Yeah.
that went with it. But now it's refuse, reuse, reduce, recycle. So recycle is actually your last option. So refuse is limit
use
the
it.
amount that you're using.
Right.
Reduce the amount that you're using.
Sure.
Refuse, reduce, reuse, so reuse things, and then recycle is like the last one
Yeah.
now. So like recycling is really great, and if you can do that, that's awesome. It doesn't mean that the thing that you're recycling goes away.
Right.
Totally.
Plastic bags are a really big thing of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Turtles eat a lot of plastic bags. If you look at my paper and also at the little like one sheet, I don't know if that's somewhere too, but like I made a little like a blog post that was like a summary of my paper, and I put some pictures in it, and one of them is all the plastic bags that I found in one turtle stomach, and it was enough to cover 8 pieces of printer paper, and that was
That's
just in one
crazy.
turtle stomach, and it was top ramen like packages, it was like grocery bags, and people tell me all the
Yikes.
time, but I use my grocery bags like as trash bags. Okay, but it's still not, the bag is still being used, and like it's better than using it once, but it's not reducing the impact that bag is going to have. It's still going to end in a landfill. And even when we try our best with recycling, just because it gets in a recycling truck does not mean that it's going to actually get to where it needs to go
Totally.
or get recycled. A lot of times we try to recycle things that our local recycling won't even recycle, and it just gets
Right.
thrown away anyway.
Yeah.
For sure.
So the best thing to do is reduce the amount of things that we use.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff recently about plastic straws, the single-use
Yes.
straws, being pulled out of turtles'
Turtle nose, yep.
noses. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, it's heartbreaking. It really, really is
It's
heartbreaking.
really easy at a restaurant. I did it the other day here in Albuquerque to say no straw. And sometimes the wait staff
Yeah.
is like, no straw. I'm like, yes, no straw. And sometimes they're like, thank you. Like, so some people just don't realize. But yeah, straws are one of those things that we don't really need. Like, some people have medical reasons that they need a straw.
Right.
That, like,
For
I'm
sure.
not saying
Yeah.
that, you know. But like,
Right.
generally, okay, when you're at home and you pour yourself a glass of water, do you get a straw?
No.
No. If
Yeah.
you make yourself a margarita at home, do you use like 4 of those little itty bitty straws that you can't actually get anything out
No.
of? No, you just
Yeah,
drink it
it's
because
not
you can.
necessary, right.
I like making myself like a walrus.
Well,
And
I
then
have a
trying to
solution for you.
Drink
Yeah.
as much
You
as I
can. There are really awesome
Reusable
glass
ones.
and stainless
Yeah.
steel, and like
Totally.
they're plastic, but they're reusable. That actually you can. They have little like carrying cases, so you can like put them in your purse or like your bag or whatever, and take them with you, and you
Yeah.
can put them in the dishwasher when you get home,
I have
and
a,
you
I
can
have
reuse them.
a mussel straw. I should just go like.
Yeah, well then
Yeah.
that works. That's
right?
best.
There
It's
you go.
totally reusable.
And so reducing straws is a big thing. Plastic bags at the grocery store are a huge thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring out a prop real quick.
Yes. Props. We
So
love
one thing
props.
you can do, first of all, reusable water bottle.
Fuck yeah. I have not bought, besides going to a foreign country that you can't drink the water,
Right.
I have not bought plastic water bottles, like the
Yeah.
single-use ones,
Exactly.
in years.
Yeah.
Like it's,
This is my
Oh, that's
Yeah,
nice.
there you
yeah.
go.
And then I
Like,
have,
it's-
this is my coffee. And
Yep.
some coffee places will give you a discount if you
Yes.
bring your own mug.
yes, totally. Yep.
And then this is just an example. This is an old salsa jar, and I use it when I bring my lunch to school.
There you go.
It's like Mary Poppins for
Is
sustainability.
this a Sadie's?
It's a Sprouts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a. That's
So
a-
this is a plastic
Yeah.
bag that had tortillas in it. It's a Ziploc bag. I have not bought plastic wrap or Ziploc bags or anything that's not a reusable container in years, probably, because there are plastics that I can't avoid. Like I want to
Right.
eat tortillas. I love Mexican food. I eat tortillas. They
Yeah.
come in a bag. It's a Ziploc bag. I need a Ziploc bag
Reuse
for
it.
something. I have it. You can wash it
sure.
out. You need bags for like your little trash can in your bathroom. I have a
Totally.
plastic trash can in my bathroom, like a kind of a hardy one,
Right.
and I just wash it after I empty it.
We
like-
do live in like an era of very disposable everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
part of it.
if you feel like you really strongly need a bag in your trash can in your bathroom, think of like cereal bags or bread bags or like if you buy toilet paper in bulk and you think about it, like the bulk toilet paper comes in a big bag. If you just open it carefully, you have a big bag. So there's lots of plastic bags that we can't really otherwise avoid because that's just how things are packaged.
Right.
That we can reuse and then not create a need for additional plastic bags that are just there to be a bag.
For sure.
And one of the things is,
Edible straws.
ooh, that
That's
I
a
like
good
those
idea.
paper straws, licorice, right? The
Yeah.
original as a kid edible straw. And then one of the things that I'm big on, and this is like a reusable produce bag, if you can see.
Oh yeah.
So they have this nice little drawstring that's also really good for like
my God.
for like bulk stuff.
That's
if you go
for
to
like
bulk.
those shitty plastic bags that you can never find, and I always try not to use
Yeah.
anyway.
And also, like, do your bananas really need to go in a bag? Because your bananas
real.
are already in a case. Or your oranges.
Yeah.
Or anything that has a case. And also, all the fruit is already disgustingly dirty because you think of, like, the chain of supply to get your fruit to the grocery store and all the people that have, like, touched it just like you did to see if it was ripe. So, like, really putting it in a bag to get it to your house is not making it all that much more sanitary. But, like, if you don't want things to, like, roll off the conveyor belt, these are really awesome. They're machine washable. I think this one's from Sprouts, but like you can buy them on Amazon in bulk.
I never
They come
even
in
knew
different
that
sizes.
existed. That's awesome.
Here's another one that I have.
That's lovely. It's like
Um,
those like laundry bags that you can put underwear in. or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so like produce bags in case you have stuff, and then like
That's awesome.
grocery bag. And the biggest
For sure.
complaint when I tell people like use a reusable grocery bag is, well, it's kind of unsanitary because I can't clean it. If you get a canvas one, you can throw it in the
Yeah,
washing
throw it
machine.
in the washer.
So I buy all canvas ones. And so anyway, that's my little soapbox for you. But there's like super easy ways that we can help turtles
For sure.
and the ocean and in turn ourselves, really, because we're eating the stuff that comes out of
Yeah,
the ocean,
totally.
a lot of us.
Right.
So like having these reusable things that are like, it's just a really easy lifestyle change that we can make that can really have a big impact, and it can save you money because like water's expensive. And I saw at the grocery store, somebody was advertising like nutritional water as like an advertising tactic, or water now with extra hydrogen.
Ooh.
So like
H3O, isn't that ozone?
H3O is heavy water, I think.
So-
No.
like
isn't it
that's
ozone?
not really a thing, and
Or
so
is it H2O2? That's ozone.
No, H2O2 is
That's ozone, right?
what he thought was
Hydrogen
H2O was really
peroxide.
H2O2.
Oh, yeah,
no,
you're
it's H2O24 because it's like somebody didn't label it right.
Ozone
And he
is
goes
at
into the
O3.
lab and he goes, something
Yeah.
was what he thought was H2O was really H2SO4. That's what it is.
H2SO4.
Okay, so
That's
Yeah.
sulfuric acid.
So-
Yeah. My
Something like
my
that.
shout out to my high school chemistry
There you
teacher
go.
who
I don't
told
know
me that
shit
little
about
riddle.
nothing.
So yeah, it's hydrogen peroxide. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Anyway, moral of the story, like recycle things, reuse things if you can, and really just like refuse like really simple things. If you're buying a soda at the grocery store and they put it in a bag, just say no thank you, I don't need the bag.
Yeah, right?
If you're buying a gallon of milk that already has a handle built into it
Yeah,
that doesn't
you
need to
don't
go in a
need
bag.
that,
Like
for sure.
I'm always carrying, like if I forget my bags, I shove stuff in my purse when I check out and they're like, are you sure you don't need a bag? I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah,
can carry
it's
the like
fine.
5 things.
Right.
I'm okay.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it seems like people almost get offended when you're like, no, I don't need a bag.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, like you
Like,
don't
no, I'm
really
good.
need a bag. Like you can
Yeah,
carry the
no.
soda. I believe in you.
yeah,
You can do it.
for sure.
One of a random aside, I don't think most people know that plastic is made out of oil.
Oh,
Right?
yeah,
So
for sure.
that's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have anything other to
I've-
say than that. But
so-
yeah, plastic is made out of
Yeah.
oil.
So I've seen there's a really good.
It takes energy to create,
Yeah.
and then we're just throwing it in the ocean for animals to eat.
And so there's this really great, I can't remember who created it, but I've seen a really good educational graphic, and it's about like a plastic spoon. People use plastic spoons because they don't want to wash the dishes at the end of the day.
Right.
But the amount of energy and the effort and what it takes to actually get that spoon from nothing to your house to the trash to
Right.
the landfill is like an incredible amount
Just use
more
a
of
tortilla.
energy. Like
Yeah,
I use a
right.
tortilla chip. I do that a lot of times.
Yeah,
Yeah, edible
But like
spoon.
Totally.
you can just, like I'm a big, like if I go to a barbecue, I usually bring I bring like a Tupperware and my own utensils because it's really hard for me after spending months and months,
Oh, yeah.
like elbow deep in sea turtle guts filled with plastic. Like
Right.
it's hard
I
for
totally
me
get
to
Edible
use disposable
utensils,
things.
again.
Yeah,
We
so
just
that's
need
something
edible
that's
stuff,
something
for
that I've
sure.
seen that's kind of been coming out.
Really?
I've seen some
Like a
companies are doing that.
Beef jerky knife or something.
Great idea.
Slice my steak and then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's
And there's
yeah,
a couple
okay.
people talking about how if you go to a place, they'll either charge you for plastic bags or at the very least reward you for using.
So like
reusable ones,
Target gives
so
you
that's great.
Target and Sprouts give you like 5 cents off. I don't know other stores. That's where I've lived. I've always had those stores, so
me
that's
with
what they
me.
have. But it's something that I'm aware of, and I always appreciate it when stores will give me a
Yeah.
discount. But it's
It's
something
like 10
like
cents or something.
I mean, there were days during my study, like I would call my parents crying. I would just be so like demoralized because I would spend just like 8 hours by myself. I started talking to my Netflix shows because I had been in the lab for so long by myself.
No flash.
Yeah.
So I watched a lot of Grey's Anatomy because I was dissecting things, so I felt very
There
surgical.
you go, for sure. Yeah.
But, so I'd call my parents and trash is just highlighted for me now. When I'm out
Yeah.
and I see litter, it's just totally highlighted because I've
Yeah.
spent so much time,
Totally.
not only during the study, but then writing the paper and really delving into how marine debris has affected over 700 species. It also, anthropogenic
Probably
debris
all.
also affects species on land. I read a paper one time that desert tortoises in a habitat, we were talking earlier about lands that are set aside, it was specific habitat for endangered desert tortoises, and they did a survey and they found more popped balloons than desert tortoises.
Oh, God.
So,
That's
it's not just the
crazy.
ocean. So if you don't live near the ocean, it's
Yeah.
out of
still
sight, out of mind,
it's
right?
still an impact that you can you can still have a positive impact by reducing what you use, even if you don't live near the
Right.
ocean.
It's got to go somewhere.
Just think
Yeah,
about
there's no way.
everything you've ever thrown away. It's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
It's
There are
somewhere.
some people that have
Yep.
done really cool little studies that have been or little challenges where it's for a week collect all your trash and see how much you make, and then look and see what you can change.
Right.
Sure.
Well, I've seen a couple people who have they do the sort of micro trash thing where they will only have this much trash for a year
Yeah.
or something.
And that's really hard to
That's
do.
Dude.
really hard.
I freaked out after one of the days in lab, and I went to the grocery store and I had to buy dinner, and I was like, I'm not buying anything packaged in plastic, and I totally freaked out
Were you
because
going to eat
everything
an
was.
avocado?
Yeah,
I left.
Everything's
I
in
left with
plastic,
a
yeah.
banana and a can of beans.
Yeah.
And I realized when I got home that the banana had a plastic sticker on it, and the beans had the plastic coating, which is good because the plastic coating is so we don't get sick. But my whole goal was I think I found things, and then I was like, no, I did not.
Yep.
Find things. So, but it's really changed how I use resources, and it's
sure.
changed how my friends have used resources, and
Yeah.
it's just something that it's not that it's something we do intentionally. It's just I never really thought of it until I was really engrossed in it, and it's one of those things you don't think about all the waste you're using. It's really easy to wash a dish. Paper plates, I get it, are convenient, but it's really easy to throw something in a dishwasher or to wash
Totally.
a dish, and
Right.
small changes. It's really easy to fill up a water bottle, provided you live in a place where there's safe drinking water,
Right, yeah.
That's the caveat.
For sure.
But there's so many little things that we can do, buy things in bulk. I don't ever buy a little hand soap. I go to Costco and I get the big hand soap, and I fill up the same little bottle over and over
Right,
again.
right.
I'm still creating waste, but I'm creating less waste. I
Sure.
don't buy individual yogurts. I buy a big yogurt, and I put it in my own reusable Tupperware.
There you go.
Still creating waste. I have about a million stacked up big yogurt containers in my house,
Sure.
and I bake a lot. That's like my productive procrastination is baking. So I bring like people get yogurt containers full of cookies, and so
There you go.
so like there's
Dude.
you can't really avoid it altogether because it's just what life is right now.
Right.
But you can hugely reduce what your use is just by just even thinking about it.
But it's so easy to just put it in the bin and then it goes away, and you
Right.
never
And you
have
never
to think
see
about
it
it
again.
ever
It's-
again.
Unless
you're, like,
unless
elbow deep
someone
in
is
turtle
right, like
guts.
unless
Yeah.
You know what I
someone
mean?
is really truly confronted
Right.
Yeah.
with the impact, you don't see it, and it's just out of sight, out of mind. So it's like, that's why like talking about things like this, it's like kind of depressing and a little gruesome,
Yeah.
but it's super important because unless you're seeing these things, you're not gonna really understand the impact that you're having.
Right.
And I think that's a huge thing. Like if someone loves turtles as much as you do, and you're knee deep in this
Yeah.
like turtle eaten trash,
Yeah.
like you're gonna change your habits. Like that's just the way it is. And I think that that's where things like flagship species come in, like really showing what your actions are doing to your favorite animal, or even to other humans.
Right.
Yeah.
Like all of these things can potentially have impacts on humans
Yeah.
too. Like we're eating these things sometimes, which is a whole other issue. But
Right.
like, you know, I mean,
Like fish eat it, right? And then
Yeah.
we eat the fish.
right.
So
So
Yeah.
it's like these are all things that one way or another we are probably going to consume or be indirectly impacted by. And
Yeah.
so it's like putting it in perspective to things that we really care about, like ourselves or our favorite animals or whatever, is like, I think that's going to have a much bigger impact than just saying like reuse your bags or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
just like you can, like anybody can say those things till you're, you know, blue in the teeth, and then
Right.
and nobody will care unless they really see it,
Yeah.
you know.
And it's
So-
hard to see, but like it's just something that it's hard to see, but at the same time it's you see the things that are in these, right? Like plastic bags and single-use plastics, and there's so much that we can do to have a positive impact. So while it's like it's a little bit, it can be overwhelming, but it should also be kind of motivating and inspiring to get you to think about, like, make it a challenge. Go try it small, right? Any change you want to do in your life, it's good to start out small. Like if you still buy water and you live in a place where you can get safe drinking water, invest in a good reusable water bottle and see how you like it. Just get used to carrying it around. Mine goes with me everywhere. You know, get a reusable grocery bag and see how it goes, and just like do a little change here and there, and then see, you know, there will be kind of a ripple effect, and you just get used to it.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say water tastes best out of steel.
Dude,
anyways.
I love drinking water out of those.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you
better.
get a slightly metallic taste, and I kind of like it.
We need a way to, like, I don't know, every school kid should be sent like a songbird that's been choked out by plastic or something, and in 20 years the problem will be
Yeah.
fixed. You know what I
So
mean?
there's a lot.
Right.
Like I do a lot. I do a lot of like in-person visits and virtual visits, like over Skype and things, to schools, and I tailor it to different levels, right? I don't tell a kindergartner that like sea turtles are eating their trash and dying, because that'll just scare them. And I once dressed up like a sea turtle for the where I
Nice.
worked at, and I walked into the room, and the 4-year-olds ran out screaming and crying because they couldn't tell if I was real or not, and they freaked
Yeah.
out.
There we
That's
go.
Yes. Oh, it's
Fantastic.
shimmery.
Hell yeah,
You've
it
got
is.
the background.
Awesome. It's like turtle on turtle. That's
really funny.
Yeah, I like
And
that.
it's blue because it's green.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. Shout out to my friend Sarah who got me that for
There you
Christmas.
go.
Yes. And
Floating with the total.
30
but-
miles an hour right here.
so I do a
That's
lot of
right.
outreach on this topic, and it's really something that has become, it's gotten a lot of, someone I saw a comment was saying that there should be more media attention, and it's getting a
Yeah.
lot of media attention. Another paper that that I didn't lead but was a co-author on got a lot. I think there was like a blurb in Time magazine about it, and there's a lot of attention on the subject, and the video of some folks pulling a straw out of a turtle nose went totally viral,
That's
and so it's becoming more and more of something that's talked about, but it's still something that not everybody, especially people who don't live by the ocean or by a big body of water, think about.
Right.
But everyone's connected and everyone has an impact, and you know, we can all change that impact and make it more positive by really simple lifestyle changes.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
That's a very nice uplifting note, I think, for the know, pretty depressing topic. Like, there are things you can do to make this problem a little bit better.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah. So,
All right.
super
Excellent.
important. All right, so let's move on to our final segment this evening. And I kind of was in the middle of other conversations going on in chat, but while we get this going, let us know what the coolest thing you learned this week, either tonight or otherwise. And while we're waiting for you guys to let us know what you guys learned, we'll talk about some cool shit that we learned. Let's see.
What's the coolest thing?
I learned today while listening to an old TED Radio Hour podcast about chemosynthesis,
Okay.
which is sort of a sister to photosynthesis that only occurs in areas where there is no sunlight. And it basically allows for certain species to live and survive and actually extract energy from their world around them at these super, super depths in the ocean, basically.
Yeah.
So, which I did not know was a thing.
It's like the deep
yeah.
sea vents.
Yeah. Well, so that's different. That's like the geothermal. I'm guessing
that
it's
is
probably the same.
chemosynthesis.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. It was talked about in not that context. I assumed that was part of chemosynthesis, but not all chemosynthesis was that.
It would be that any organism that does not derive its energy from
From
the
the
sun
sun,
would,
right. Is
So like
using
we do
chemosynthesis.
indirectly, right? Because we
Sure.
eat shit that.
Right. Vitamin D.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's cool. What did I learn? I learned that, I don't remember what it was called, but there's an animal with giant middle fingers. That
Aye,
really-
the aye, yeah, yep.
Just flips people.
Dobintonia madagascariensis.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Flips
There you
people
go.
off and gets shit done.
Yep.
I like that.
That's right. Eating some insects.
Yeah.
The coolest thing I
That's
learned
right.
is that loggerhead turtles are the only soft-shelled
Leatherback.
leatherback
Yes.
are the only soft-shelled sea turtles, and that's because they can dive super deep, and the flexing of the shell actually allows them to compress. Otherwise, they would probably implode.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Which is a
That's really
gangster
crazy.
fact. That's like
Yeah.
my new favorite fact.
Yeah,
actually.
that's really awesome, actually. Kimash says that they learned that turtles consider plastic straws a delicacy to be ingested only through the nose.
Cocaine addicts,
doesn't
really.
end well.
Yep,
Yeah.
does not end well for sure.
Snorting them lines.
Yep. Straw lines. I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah. I learned some shit about turtles. That's for damn sure.
It was cool.
Turtles are one of those things that like
pasta
you're.
marina.
Oh
Pasta.
yeah,
Pasta.
pasto.
Pasta marino.
Pasta marina.
There you
I like
go.
that one quite a
Seagrass,
bit,
right?
yeah.
That's
We
a
learned
nice
that
one.
green
Learn some
turtles would
Spanish.
probably be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
Sea turtles.
Yep.
I still have no reasoning behind that.
They're the most charismatic.
They're one of
Yeah.
they're like the kind of they're like, if you see a picture of a sea turtle, it's likely a green turtle.
For
Like,
sure.
The picture behind us is a green turtle.
Is it really?
Ah,
You can tell
okay.
because see how it has kind of like 4 spots. That's kind of like eyeliner.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, and then they have 2
Drama turtle.
Yeah, they have 2
Yeah.
also called scoots, like the scoots on their shell,
Right.
but also they're called prefrontal scoots between their eyes, and green turtles just have 1 pair.
Nice.
Oh,
So you can
okay,
tall by their
cool.
face.
Yeah,
So
that's
they've
like
got the eyeliner and then the 2 here.
I see. Yeah, even in humans, these are we our frontal bone in childhood
Okay.
is 2, and then they fuse. But in like probably 5% or so of people, you actually don't have them fuse, so you actually still end up with a suture. And you can actually feel it if it's there. It's pretty cool. So I don't
We're
think I have one.
All touching ourselves weirdly
So-
now.
Yeah, right. Everybody check.
everyone
check
at home is doing it
themselves.
too, so that's
Everyone's
cool.
like,
Yeah.
do I have that? Yeah, if you
Yeah.
feel like kind of like a little divot there, you probably have a suture, which is basically just like a joint almost between cranial bones. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, cool. Okay. So we have SMR 1402 learned that St. Patrick of Ireland is not a canonized saint. Learned this last week, not science though, but still,
Doesn't
that's a
matter.
cool thing
Yeah, it
that's,
doesn't
that
matter.
you learned. Yeah.
Didn't he-
okay.
You touch my forehead.
There you go.
Wasn't he supposed to expel all the snakes
Yeah, I think
from
so.
Ireland?
Right,
Isn't
yeah,
that why
yeah.
he's like a big deal, right?
Yeah, I
was
think
in
so.
Ireland recently. I didn't learn about him, but I learned a lot about whiskey. It was lovely.
Oh, there you
Dude,
go.
Irish whiskey's
It's
So
really
good.
good.
and
We've
it's spelled
been-
with an E.
Yes.
I highly recommend the Irish Whiskey Museum.
Oh,
dude,
okay.
I'll
Not
go.
the Jameson, but the
Right,
Irish.
the
It's like a little
actual-
nonprofit, basically, like a little business.
Ah,
Irish Whiskey
gotcha.
Museum in Dublin.
My favorite whiskey is an Irish whiskey. It's Redbreast. Oh,
I don't really like whiskey.
See,
but
I'm
I
a
drink
Green
lot of it in
Spot.
Ireland.
I like
It's
Green
good.
Spot,
Yeah.
which is also an Irish whiskey.
that shit's
It's
delicious.
expensive. They're both pretty expensive, but
I saw some.
I like the whiskey with an E.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw something. This is not related to whiskey, but I saw something in the chat talking about Finding Nemo.
Yes.
Sea turtles would definitely sound like that if they could talk.
What's up, bro?
We have an International Sea Turtle Society, and I have been around a
Nice.
lot of sea turtle biologists that
Yep.
would totally talk like that. They do not. The babies do not live with their parents, so that interaction
Right.
doesn't happen.
Sure.
They're not really social animals, but we do believe they live to be about 100, but there's no way to age a sea turtle unless you know when it was hatched, and we've only really been doing sea turtle work since like the 60s, 70s-ish,
Oh.
like with
Wow.
a lot of documentation, so we don't know how long they can live,
Sure.
but we're pretty sure like 100-ish.
Right.
So
That's
Crush was
awesome.
right, and
There you go.
the voice was spot on.
Nice.
And they do go out to currents and like ride the currents, but they don't like go hang out as a family and do that.
They're not like surfing and be like, "What's up, dude?"
No, I
Yeah.
mean they would say
I
that.
mean, they
but
probably
not
would
together.
say that, yeah. But not together.
Yeah.
Solitary animals.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, cool. Well, I think we learned some things.
Yeah.
I think you guys learned some things,
That
at
was
least
fun.
hopefully. Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, so a really fantastic typo happened. There were also no snacks in Ireland, not found anywhere on the island, but apparently it was supposed to be snakes.
No snacks.
I was like, maybe you were just really hungry the whole time. I had no idea.
Some
Yeah.
good food in Ireland.
Yeah?
No
Pretty
snacks.
good food. Like meat and potatoes, but it was pretty delicious.
That's pretty funny. Oh man.
People like hung out for a while. That's awesome.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Cheers to
Yeah.
y'all
Thank
that
you guys
hung
so
out.
much.
Oh yeah. and,
Cheers to you
One
guys.
of my friends defended her PhD today, so
Nice.
shout out to my friend
Nice.
Tiffany, who's a doctor.
Tiffany.
now.
Dr. Tiffany.
Dr.
Yeah.
Tiffany. Fuck yeah. That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Oh, what's the next episode about? Good question. Next week, we're talking about black holes.
Cool. I know nothing.
It's going to be super fun. We actually have a researcher from the University of New Mexico here who just had a fantastic paper published.
Oh.
You might have heard about this, but we'll have someone on who is involved with this research who they found the first ever observation of two black holes orbiting around each other.
Oh, dang.
Really, really incredible. It's been all over the news, so we're going to have someone here who is actually involved in this research. So
Awesome.
that's what we'll be talking about next week. So it's going to
Cool.
be super fun.
I look forward
So-
to tuning in.
And we're going to let our biodiverse dogs come out here while we're finishing up.
They're gonna get all the popcorn.
Hello.
Come here.
Yeah, they're going to eat all the little popcorns. Hello, little dogs. Hi there. Oh, goodness. Anyway, well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for all your questions and for hanging out with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope we see you guys next week for our black hole episode. It should be a good time. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.